Chapter 281. 5 Elements Formation. Sheng hadn't expected to see such a thing in this plane. It was actually quite powerful. But then he realized that it was normal. This plane had spiritual energy, which meant that some special people in this plane needed spiritual energy. Activating the 5 elements formation required the use of spiritual energy. But why did they only trap her and not kill her? Could it be that they couldn't bear to kill her, because she was too beautiful? TSK. Sheng propped up the old equipment next to him with the iron sword. His faint voice rang out in the darkness. You made the right choice. You can live a few more days. Go break the formation. Sheng let go of the iron sword. Buzz buzz. The iron sword seemed reluctant. Do you want me to do it? Sheng raised his eyebrows and asked. Buzz. If you don't want to go, then we'll be trapped here for the rest of our lives. Sheng sat down at a nearby table. Iron sword. Master, is it really okay for you to be so willful? Someone is plotting against you outside. Aren't you going to cut them down? How can you let those little bitches be so arrogant? What's with my master's temper suddenly becoming better? I don't understand. Waiting online. Urgent. In the end, the iron sword reluctantly went to break the formation. It was a small matter that could be solved with just a lift of its master's arm. Why did it have to go? The iron sword felt wronged. So it was very rough when it broke the formation. By the time it broke the formation, the entire building had collapsed. Sheng's face was covered in dust. The iron sword stood calmly in front of Sheng. It wasn't its fault that the building couldn't withstand the torment. Sheng wiped his face, patted the dust off his skirt, and walked out expressionlessly with the iron sword. Sheng acted as if nothing had happened. He went back to the villa to take a shower and change his clothes. He even leisurely went to Liang Ji's place to take a look. The system was as confused as the iron sword. Why was the host so calm this time? This didn't make sense. She should be so angry that she could jump up and destroy the world. Was there something wrong with the system today? That must be it. Shut down. Restart. The host was leisurely watching a movie. Host, this system is afraid of you. Master, come quickly. The host's brain has been flooded with water. After 3 days of strange peace in Sheng, they finally set off for the blood race. There was a barrier between the blood race and humans. When the blood race banquet began, there would be blood race receptionists in the ancient castle outside the barrier. Humans usually moved in groups, while vampires moved alone. Sheng took the invitation and handed it to the vampire receptionist who was guarding the barrier. The vampire receptionist placed the invitation on a desk, and a red frame immediately popped up on the computer screen beside it. The receptionist looked up at the Sheng in confusion. They could only see the level of the invitation, but not who was holding it. This invitation card was S-grade, a high-class invitation card. Those who could hold an S-grade invitation card were either pure-blooded vampires, or important figures with lofty positions in certain large families. Therefore, the receptionist carefully placed the invitation card again, but the result was the same. He returned the invitation to Sheng and raised his guard. I'm sorry, madam, but I can't use your invitation. Why? Sheng asked calmly. According to the information, your invitation card has already been used. The receptionist's words were very tactful. He didn't directly say that she had a fake invitation card. It had been used. Sheng smiled mockingly, trapping her and pretending to be her to attend the blood race banquet. His motive was really curious. Just when the receptionist thought that the woman was going to make trouble, she took the invitation card back and said with a smile, "Can you help me contact Ku'er?" The receptionist was shocked. This woman knew Prince Ku'er? Of course. Please wait a moment, madam. Not everyone in the blood race knew some of the people with lofty statuses. Therefore, when encountering such a situation, the receptionist would always be cautious and ask for confirmation. He turned around and dialed Ku'er's internal line. Hello, is Prince Ku'er there? It's like this, there's a problem with this lady's invitation card. She seems to know Prince Ku'er, so we'd like to ask Prince Ku'er. The receptionist turned to Sheng. May I ask your name, madam? Mi Nai. The receptionist almost dropped the phone in his hand. Mi Nai, Prince Ku'er's adopted daughter? What the hell was there to confirm? All the blood race knew that Prince Ku'er had a very doting adopted daughter. However, only a few blood race members had seen her before. The receptionist hung up the phone trembling. His previous attitude could be said to be neither servile nor overbearing, but now it was respectful. The prince will send someone to pick you up. Please wait here for a moment. Sheng was led to a private lounge. The receptionist came out, trembling with fear, and patted his chest. Fortunately, this person had a good temper. If it were someone else, they would probably have gotten into a fight already. When he looked up and saw that someone had come in, he immediately restrained his emotions and smiled at the newcomer. Half an hour later, a man and a woman entered the lounge. The man looked old, but the woman was very young. She was dressed like a student and looked around cautiously. Please show me your invitation card. The man handed over the invitation card, and the receptionist quickly saw the grade of the invitation card. It was actually A rank. Only the powerful and prestigious blood hunters would be able to receive an A-rank invitation. He calmly returned the card. Please come in. There will be someone to lead you to the blood race. Please carry the invitation card with you at all times. Don't lose it. Second uncle. The woman called out timidly. Just follow me. The man's face was stern. Don't be afraid. The woman nodded and followed the man inside. However, she stopped after a few steps. A group of people suddenly came out of the castle. The man in the lead was young and handsome, with flowing silver hair. He wore a tuxedo, and his every movement exuded elegance and nobility. The man pulled the woman back a few steps. The man only glanced at them indifferently, his eyes emotionless. It was as if he didn't care about them at all. He had the oppressive aura of a superior, and no one dared to look at him directly. Your Highness Rui. The receptionist had appeared beside them at some point. He placed a hand on his chest and bowed. Rui raised his eyebrows and said in an intimate tone, "Where's the little princess?" "In the lounge." "Your Highness, this way please." The receptionist led the way and soon disappeared from the lounge. After Rui left, the woman heaved a sigh of relief. Second uncle, who was that person? Prince Ker's eldest son. The man lowered his voice and replied. Is he very powerful? The woman frowned and looked over. Prince Ker. A prince should be very powerful, right? The man pressed her head and said in a low voice. After you go in, don't ask, don't look, and don't run around. Just listen, understand? The woman nodded in confusion. Yes, second uncle. Asterisk serious face, please vote. Chapter 282. 100 years ago, Minai's family had been wiped out in the Great War before the Bloodlings and vampire hunters signed the treaty. Only the underage Minai remained. Later, Ku'er adopted her. Ku'er's family treated her well, and she was very grateful to them. However, she felt that she didn't fit in, so she left the Bloodlings and lived alone in the human world. Ku'er probably didn't know that Minai had been captured by the BHA. If he knew, he definitely wouldn't have let her die. Sheng propped up his chin as he recalled Minai's life with Ku'er's family. The heavy door was suddenly pushed open, and a tall figure pounced on him. Little princess, let big brother hug you. Sheng immediately dodged, and Rui missed and fell onto the sofa. Rui pulled his face up from the soft sofa and looked at Sheng with some resentment. Little princess, it's been so long. Didn't you miss me? I'm so sad. So sad I can't breathe. I need a kiss from little princess. Sheng was speechless as he watched Rui put on an act. This man, Rui, Ku'er's first child. He had watched Minai grow up and loved to dress up as her. It was fine before she was adopted. After all, she was in her own home, and it was difficult for Rui to dress up. But ever since he was adopted by Ku'er, Rui practically treated Minai like a doll. Changing into more than 10 outfits a day was considered light. Sheng suspected that he was the main reason Minai ran away from home. Sheng quickly stood up. She didn't want to go through the same torture as Minai. But Rui clearly wasn't going to let her go. He climbed up from the sofa without kissing her. Little princess, why are you dressed like this? Good thing I came prepared. Bring the things in. The people waiting outside immediately brought the things in, and blocked the door with practiced ease. Shisheng. She was now 100% sure that this guy had forced Minai to run away. Rui had already picked out a few exaggerated dresses and brought them to Shisheng. Little princess, which one do you like? I think pink suits your skin, but it's a bit monotonous. Blue is too dark and makes you look old. How about white? This one looks better. Shisheng looked at the dress in his hand. His mouth twitched. Were they trying to dress her up as Snow White or White Lotus? No matter which one it is, I'll reject it. Shisheng took a deep breath. I want to see foster father first. What's so good about him? He's just an old man. Rui was displeased. We should dress up beautifully. You'll be the most dazzling princess at the Feast of the Vampires. Shisheng. That old man is your father. Come, little princess, quickly change into it. Rui approached the Shisheng with the white gift in his hand. He had a strange look on his face that resembled a weird uncle looking at a little lowly. In the end, Shisheng couldn't hold back and beat Rui up. In the past, when the host was annoyed by Rui, she would also beat him up. Shisheng's beating was completely in line with the host's behavior. Little princess, why are you becoming more and more violent? Rui sprawled on the carpet without a care for his image as he wailed bitterly. How can you get married like this? Girls need to be virtuous, virtuous. How many times have I told you? Shisheng resisted the urge to beat Rui up again. Instead, he pushed aside the people blocking the door and walked out. Rui hurriedly stood up and smoothed out his messy hair. As soon as he left the room, he was once again the elegant and noble Prince Rui. The people following behind him all lowered their heads. Every time their prince met Minai, he would split into two. They were already used to it. Really, they were used to it. Little princess, is the human world fun? Rui walked beside Shisheng. It's not like you can go whether it's fun or not. Shisheng smiled wickedly. As the eldest son of a prince, Rui absolutely couldn't leave the vampires. Only the eldest son could inherit the position of prince. Little princess. Rui's expression was bitter. The little princess had turned bad in the human world. Shisheng couldn't be bothered with this lunatic. As soon as he entered Prince Ker's territory, he shook him off and flew towards the castle. Minai had lived in Ker for nearly 100 years, so almost everyone here knew her. Your Highness Minai, you've returned? The castle's maids were all surprised to see Shisheng. Your Highness Minai. Your Highness Minai. Shisheng nodded at them with a smile. Is foster father here? These maids used to treat the original Shisheng quite well. They were also very cute, so Shisheng was willing to treat them gently. Ah, he's here. But the prince has a guest right now. Your Highness. Why don't you return to your room and rest for a while? A maid rushed to answer. Your Highness' room has already been cleaned. Your Highness Rui. Another series of salutes came from behind. Shisheng hurriedly ran upstairs, not forgetting to instruct the maids, stop him. The maids all burst into laughter and went up to stop Rui, who came in after him. Quite a commotion ensued. When Minai returned, she felt as if the usually deserted castle had suddenly become lively. Shisheng found Minai's room based on his memory. As expected, the coffin in the room was extremely exquisite and luxurious. Shisheng stayed in the room for a while before someone knocked on the door, saying that Ker wanted to see him. Shisheng was afraid of running into Rui, so he asked the maid who led the way. The maid replied with a smile. Don't worry, Your Highness. His Highness Rui went to the banquet and won't be back for a while. Only then did Shisheng relax and nod. She really couldn't stand Rui's passionate way of tormenting her. When they went upstairs, Shisheng saw a car leaving the courtyard below and raised his eyebrows. Who was in that car? The person leaving now should be the guest Ker had just met. The maid looked over as well. Your Highness, I don't know. Shisheng didn't ask any more questions and followed the maid to Ker's study. The door to Ker's study was open. The maid knocked on it and let Shisheng in. The light in the study was very soft. A tall figure stood in front of the window, looking out. Foster father. Shisheng called out obediently and looked out of the window. Just in time to see the car disappear around the corner. Ker turned around. He was a very handsome man who looked a little like Rui. If they weren't father and son, they would definitely look like brothers when they stood together. His sharp eyes softened the moment he saw Shisheng. Little girl, you're still willing to come back. Ker's tone was affectionate, but there was also a hint of helplessness in his voice. Now that you're back, you're being blocked outside. Where am I supposed to put my old face if word gets out? Shisheng smiled faintly, as if he had retracted all his sharp and thorny aura. That's my fault. I'm too unknown. The bloodlings almost don't recognize me anymore. You little brat, Ker scolded with a smile. How are you getting used to life outside? Pretty good. Look at your complexion. You're so pale. Pretty good? You're lying through your teeth. Shisheng. How did my complexion look pale? Don't I look radiant and dazzling? Asterisk thank you to the cherub who tipped me. All please vote. Chapter 283. After chatting with Ko'er for a while, Shisheng was certain that Ko'er truly treated Minai as his own child. So she couldn't help but become more docile and polite. Someone's pretending to be you? Ko'er's expression immediately darkened when he heard Shisheng's reason for being barred from entering. Who would have the guts to pretend to be you? I'll send someone to investigate right now. Godfather, don't worry. I can handle it myself. How can that be? Ko'er was already getting angry. Godfather, you have to believe me. Shisheng looked at Ko'er. I've already grown up. Ko'er froze for a moment before bursting into laughter. All right, I'll do as you say. Godfather will back you up if anything happens. Shisheng smiled but didn't say anything. After a few seconds he said, Godfather, be careful these days. I'm not sure either. I'm worried that someone might do something in secret. It's never wrong to be careful. Ko'er nodded, his expression turning serious. You've heard about the election of a new king as well? Seeing Shisheng nod, Ko'er continued. Us old fellows won't participate. The new king will be chosen from the younger generation. You're a purebred vampire, so you hold an important vote in your hands. If someone knows that you're back, they'll definitely come knocking on your door. Stay in the castle for the next few days. If there's anything you need, just tell Rui to do it for you. Ko'er looked at Shisheng with pity. If her parents were still alive, she would also have a chance to participate in this election. But without blood, even if she ascended to the throne, she wouldn't be able to go far. Will Rui participate? Shisheng didn't answer Ko'er's question and changed the topic without batting an eyelid. No. Ko'er turned behind the desk and sighed. It's not that easy to sit on the throne. Of course it wasn't that easy to sit on the throne. Shisheng and Ko'er chatted for a bit before leaving the study and returning to their rooms. The moment she entered the room, she was shocked by the room full of clothes. What was all this for? Your Highness, you're back. A servant was tidying up the clothes when she saw Shisheng enter. These things. Shisheng hesitated. The servant smiled. His Highness Rui ordered them to be brought here. When your Highness isn't here, His Highness Rui will prepare clothes for you every month. There's every style. Shisheng. This disguised maniac. There was barely any space left in her room. There's no need to tidy them up. Take them all out and prepare a few sets of the ones I'm wearing. She didn't want to wear an exaggerated princess dress full of pink lace. He would definitely be a hindrance in a fight. The maid didn't ask much. She asked someone to take the clothes away, but she didn't take them away. Instead, she put them in the room next door. Shisheng craned his neck to take a look. Immediately, he pulled his head back. Can you imagine a room full of clothes? If she opened an online shop, it would be enough for her to sell for a few years. The vampire banquet would be held a month later. During these few days, vampire hunters and vampires from all over the world would rush over. As the eldest son of the prince, Rui was in charge of the safety of the banquet, so he spent very little time in the castle. Shisheng heaved a sigh of relief. If this guy was in the castle, she would be tortured to death. Shisheng stayed in the castle for a few days and didn't go anywhere. When she woke up that day, she found that the servants in the castle were very busy. What are you doing? Shisheng asked casually as he walked down the stairs. We have a guest coming today. The prince asked us to prepare. A guest? Who is it? The maid shook her head innocently. I don't know. Shisheng walked out of the castle just as Ku-er came in from outside. Godfather, you have a guest, Shisheng called out obediently. Ku-er's face was cold. He didn't even look at Shisheng. He snorted coldly. You said someone was impersonating you. Someone is coming today. Shisheng blinked. He knew what Ku-er was talking about. The woman who was impersonating her was coming. But, Godfather, don't be angry. Let's see what she wants. Ku-er patted Shisheng's head. He had raised his daughter for so many years. How could he not tell the difference between the real and the fake? At noon, a car drove in from outside. Ku-er had instructed the servants in the castle not to show too many of them. Only a few of the calmer ones were left. Therefore, the cute and lively maids gathered in Shisheng's room. Ah, she really looks like Your Highness? Your Highness, what do you think she wants? As a purebred vampire, Your Highness has a ring that represents her identity. That ring can't be duplicated. Let's see what she says later. The maids were discussing fervently. Shisheng stood by the window. The person downstairs had already entered the castle. That woman was dressed similarly to her. Most people wouldn't be able to recognize her. Your Highness, hurry up. Let's go take a look. The maids opened the door and waved at Shisheng. What's there to see? I'm standing right here. Haven't you seen enough? Shisheng raised his eyebrows and smiled wickedly. The maids covered their mouths and laughed. Your Highness, you're almost as narcissistic as Prince Rui. Am I not good-looking? Yes. Your Highness is the most good-looking, the maids agreed. Their Highness was truly good-looking. In the end, Shisheng couldn't dissuade these maids who had lived for hundreds of years, but were still as curious as newborn babies. Thus, he was escorted by them to take a look at the impostor. Ku-er received them in the castle's guest hall. Shisheng and the others were standing in the corner of the second floor, so they could see the scene below. Ku-er sat in the main seat and stared expressionlessly at the woman across from him. Ling Xiang's hands tightened on her lap as she considered her words. Godfather, slap. Ku-er slapped the table angrily. So you still know to come back. Ling Xiang trembled. Didn't they say Prince Ku-er doted on Minai? What was going on? Was he angry because Minai had left the clan? Ling Xiang calmed down and lowered her head in guilt. Godfather, this child is unfilial. Please don't be angry. Ku-er harumphed coldly. Do you know how much damage you've caused to our family by running away? Running away? What the hell? She didn't understand at all. Master didn't say anything about this. But Ku-er couldn't be spouting nonsense, right? Could it be that this was done in secret and outsiders didn't know about it? That was very likely. After all, Minai was adopted, not Ku-er's biological daughter. Ling Xiang's mind filled in the blanks, and she thought she understood the truth. She had come here to gain Ku-er's trust, so if she didn't answer, she would definitely arouse suspicion. Thus, Ling Xiang could only grit her teeth and reply. Godfather, I know I've wronged you, but this concerns my lifelong happiness. No matter what, I have to fight for it. Ku-er's expression turned even colder. The group of people standing on the second floor suppressed their laughter. The prince was too good at tricking people. Since when did Her Highness have an engagement? According to Prince Rui and the prince's intentions, they wanted nothing more than to raise Her Highness in this castle for the rest of her life. Asterisk, do you think I'm pretty? Do you want to vote? Chapter 284. Ling Xiang complained tearfully, but Ku-er kept a straight face the entire time, as if he really was a father who had suffered a great loss because of his daughter's escape from marriage. Shisheng leaned against the railing, his expression somewhat listless. Although this woman had figured out Minai's habits, she still didn't know some of her subtle actions. If Ku-er didn't truly care about the original owner, he might really have been deceived. There's a guest? A maid had appeared at some point, and was looking outside through the open window. Shisheng turned her head to take a look. Isn't this the guest's carriage from a few days ago? Your Highness, there's an esteemed guest. At that moment, the castle steward rushed in from outside and glanced at Ling Xiang with displeasure. Just as the steward finished speaking, someone walked in from outside. He walked in against the light, his figure swaying in the light, like a saint descending from a temple. Ling Xiang's expression shifted. Why is it him, Lord Xiyin? Ku'er immediately stood up and cautiously greeted him. Why didn't you inform us of your arrival? Xiyin's gaze landed on Ling Xiang. His expression didn't change, but his lips curved slightly. I just happened to pass by. Ku'er was suspicious. How could someone pass by from where he lived? Despite his suspicions, Ku'er led Xiyin to the seat of honor. His careful attitude made Ling Xiang even more nervous. Who was this man? He was the closest to Minai at school, but then he disappeared. She had no idea what had happened between them. What kind of reaction should she have right now? Ling Xiang had thought this mission was quite simple, but ever since she stepped into the castle, nothing had gone smoothly. Xiyin glanced at Ling Xiang with a smirk. Minai, don't you recognize me? Cold sweat broke out on Ling Xiang's back. Why did she feel like this man's smile was so terrifying? That gaze seemed to be able to see through her. Did Minai offend him? Lord Xiyin knows my daughter? Ku'er was suspicious. He hadn't heard Minai mention this before. I know her, of course I know her. Xiyin chuckled and cast a sidelong glance at Ling Xiang. He suddenly beckoned her over. Come here. Ling Xiang looked at Ku'er. This wasn't his daughter, so he didn't react at all. His mind was filled with thoughts of how did Minai know Xiyin. Ling Xiang gritted her teeth and carefully walked up to Xiyin. Xiyin was seated while Ling Xiang was standing, so he frowned in dissatisfaction. Squat down. Ling Xiang looked at Ku'er again, but there was still no reaction from him. She pinched the hem of her dress and squatted down, tilting her head slightly to look at Xiyin. This man was indeed very handsome, but he gave her a very bad feeling. She just wanted to get out of here. Xiyin stretched out his index finger and lifted Ling Xiang's chin slightly, looking left and right. Not bad. Suddenly he looked at Ku'er. Shisheng expressionlessly took out a tissue from the car, grabbed his hand, and started wiping it with some force. Xiyin watched her actions and suddenly found it funny. Was she throwing a tantrum because of this? Xiyin looked at his fingertips, which were already red from the wiping. How long was she going to wipe? Shisheng suddenly let go of him and pounced on him. He hugged his neck and rubbed his face against it. Don't touch others. I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. She was sick. She had always known this in her heart. That was why she restrained herself from falling in love with something. But she couldn't do that with Feng Xi. She wanted his entire body and soul to be hers. If anyone else touched him, she would want to kill them. Xiyin's heart skipped a beat. An indescribable feeling of discomfort welled up in him. I won't touch them. I won't touch them in the future. He had thought a lot during the time he was away. He admitted that he wanted to run away at the time, but during the time he was away, his mind was filled with images of her. When he heard that she was back, he went to find her without a second thought. But what he saw was a fake. He wouldn't forget her scent. He remembered that someone had once told him something. Some feelings couldn't be given up just because you wanted to. He hugged Shisheng and gently patted her back. Since he couldn't abandon her, he could only accept it. Yes, the female lead is sick. Chapter 285. Shisheng didn't ask why Xiyin had left without saying goodbye. Some things were better left unasked. No matter what had happened in the past, as long as he was here, it was enough. When Xiyin and Shisheng returned, there were people standing guard outside the castle. When they saw Shisheng return, they immediately went forward. Your Highness, the prince has asked you to stay with Prince Ruiyi for the time being. The servant handed a few keys to Shisheng. Shisheng nodded. Can Godfather handle it? Ku'er was probably trying to get something out of that woman. Don't worry, there's nothing the prince can't handle. The servant's face was full of admiration. When she caught sight of Xiyin standing beside Shisheng, she gasped. Your Highness, the prince has asked you to call him when you're with Prince Ruiyi. Okay, got it. You can go back now. The servant retreated to the side and respectfully sent Shisheng's car off. Ruiyi had his own residence, but it wasn't a castle. It was a small villa. He didn't live here often either. Most of the time, Rui lived in the castle. Since Rui wasn't there, Shisheng opened the door and walked in. You want to stay with me? Shisheng asked with a half-smile as he watched Xiyin change his shoes. Xiyin's ears reddened, but his expression didn't change. Yes. Aren't you afraid that I'll do something to you? Shisheng moved closer to Xiyin, his tone flirtatious. Xiyin paused and looked up at him. He said seriously, I'll be happy if you're happy. If that could make her happy, he was willing. Shisheng stood up straight and pinched his face. You've learned how to flirt. Xiyin allowed her to pinch his face. He pursed his lips and smiled. His golden eyes were full of adoration. I'll call Godfather. You go up and pick a room. The one with the red door is Rui's. Xiyin obediently went upstairs. Shisheng found the phone in the living room and called Ku'er's study. Ku'er seemed to be waiting for Shisheng's call. As soon as the call connected, the other side picked up. Damned girl. How did you and Lord Xiyin get to know each other? Shisheng moved the microphone a little further away. That was so loud. Godfather, calm down. Shisheng casually made up a story to fool Ku'er. Ku'er didn't know if he was truly fooled, or if he was just pretending to be fooled. Are you with Lord Xiyin right now? I like him, so I will naturally be with him. Foster father won't break us up, right? If your adoptive father has the guts to separate the two of you, then that's fine. You little girl, you've found yourself a golden thigh. You have to bring some benefits to the family in the future. Shisheng. Hey, this is not right. How could they talk about getting benefits so openly? No, she didn't even know who Xiyin was, so what benefit could she possibly get from him? There's no need to worry about the family. I'll think of a way to get some information out of them. You and Lord Xiyin should nurture your relationship and strive to have a child. Alright, I won't disturb you anymore. I'll tell Rui not to go back there. Beep 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 beep. Shisheng raised the phone in a daze. Godfather, you're selling your daughter. That was unkind of him. But she liked it. Shisheng happily hung up the phone. That night, the butler of the castle delivered new men's clothes and other necessities. It was obvious that he had prepared them for Xiyin. Good luck, Your Highness. Before the butler left, he didn't forget to cheer Shisheng on. What kind of person was this? Shisheng carried the clothes upstairs. Xiyin was reading a book, so she had no choice but to hang the clothes in the wardrobe herself. Can these clothes be worn? If not, I'll send someone outside to have them custom made. Xiyin put down the book, a little embarrassed. I was just torturing you back then. Shisheng glanced at him, a serious expression on his face. You should wear your best. Jean. His wife's brain was wired differently from his. That woman from today. Xiyin walked over to Shisheng and watched as she hung the clothes one by one in the wardrobe. She pretended to be you. Why did you let her jump around for so long? Based on her temper, she should have already taken that iron sword and hacked her to death. I was too bored. I wanted to see what she was up to. Shisheng closed the wardrobe, a cold expression on his face. Xiyin suddenly reached out and touched her cheek. When he saw her expression soften, he covered her cheek with his hand. Here, you can do whatever you want. No one will dare to stop you. Who are you? If even the grand princes were so careful, then wasn't he a king? But there was no king in the current bloodlings. Xiyin smiled and said softly, the current bloodlings are on the decline. The third generation has long since left the stage, and is nowhere to be found. The ones that people fear the most are the sixth generation. The sixth generation were the current grand princes. And the fourth generation. The fourth generation was pretty impressive. Apart from the ancestors, the third generation was the most powerful. Not many people knew how powerful the fourth and fifth generations were. But looking at the current grand princes of the sixth generation, it was clear that these two generations were closer to the third generation, so they couldn't be weak. But, fourth generation? You're actually so old. Shisheng looked at him with disdain. Why was she always an old man? Couldn't she get a little fresh meat? Xiyin. Was he old? Fine, he was indeed quite old compared to her. But age was basically useless to the bloodlings. That night, Shisheng held her laptop and typed furiously. Xiyin sat beside her. looking at the words that kept jumping out. His expression went from puzzlement to a strange one. His face flushed red. Shisheng typed the last word and closed her laptop. But when she turned around, she saw Shein with an awkward and red face. Shisheng. She didn't tease him just now, did she? But he's so cute. She couldn't take it anymore. Pounce. Pounce. In the end, Shisheng didn't manage to fall asleep. Rui came and pounded on the door. Didn't she say she wasn't going to let him in? Stop pounding F***ck. Shisheng threw a pillow at him. Shein lowered his head and chuckled. He reached out and rubbed her head. Shisheng covered Shein with the blanket. After making sure nothing was exposed, she got off the bed and opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Rui squeezed in, holding a broom that he'd gotten from God knows where. Where's the adulterer? Little princess, don't be fooled by men. If you want to find a man, you have to let me see him first. Shisheng grabbed him by the collar, not letting him go to the bed. Instead, he pushed him out the door. Little princess, how could you abandon me? Rui's expression changed like flipping through a book. His little princess didn't like him anymore even if she had a man. Rui's gaze became even more aggrieved at this thought. He tiptoed and peeked inside. He wanted to see which shameless gigolo dared to seduce his little princess. Shisheng's head hurt. It was better to give him a beating. This guy wouldn't behave unless he was beaten. Of course, Shisheng wouldn't be so heartless as to kill him. He just gave him a few symbolic blows before locking him outside. But Rui was fiddling with something outside. He was so loud that it made people want to kill him. Shisheng held the door and turned to look at Shein. She just wanted to sleep with her man. Why was it so difficult? Asterisk little fairy. You want to sleep with my son? Not so easy. Chapter 286. Hey little princess, did you sleep well last night? Rui had been waiting outside Shisheng's door since early in the morning. His handsome face was full of smiles, but his eyes kept darting inside. Shisheng. He'd been outside the whole night, and she hadn't slept at all. And now he had the nerve to ask? Where did his nerve come from? I'll have Godfather tie him up today. I'm so angry. Shein came out of his room and met Rui's face. Rui's expression immediately turned serious, and he looked Shein up and down as if he was appraising a product. There's nothing special about him aside from his good looks, he commented. Good looks are enough, Shisheng replied quietly. Rui looked at him plaintively. Little princess, you can't be so superficial. I'm just that superficial, Shisheng said sincerely. Rui reached out to grab Shisheng, but Shisheng immediately took a step back. Just talk. Why do you have to touch me? Rui. Little princess, you've changed. You used to let me hug you, but now you won't even let me hug you. My heart hurts. What's so good about him? Rui complained. He's good looking. Rui felt like he'd been hurt 10,000 times over. And yet, the man his little princess was protecting looked so pleased with himself. He wanted to scratch him to death. How dare he steal his little princess? In the end, Rui was dragged back by the butler. When he returned to the castle, Rui's expression was cold, and he exuded the aura of an unapproachable bastard. Big brother. Ling Xiang called out obediently when she saw Rui return. Rui glanced at her coldly, then snorted and went upstairs. Ling Xiang's heart was crumbling. What was going on with this family? Yesterday, Kaer had only arranged for her to stay, and hadn't seen her. Ling Xiang had a bad premonition. Did they know something? Ling Xiang suppressed that bad feeling. Everyone in the castle treated her with great respect, so she shouldn't have been discovered. That woman was still trapped outside, and there was no way she could break her master's array. Just like that, Ling Xiang stayed in the castle. She rarely saw Kaer, but she often saw Rui. However, Rui was in a terrible mood during this period of time. Ling Xiang spoke to him several times, but was either ignored or mocked. After Ling Xiang familiarized herself with the people in the castle, she began to wander around the castle. However, he didn't know that his actions were being observed. Kaer tapped on the desk, deep in thought. What do you think she's looking for? The butler shook his head. We don't have anything good here. Did you find out who she came in with? She came here alone. I've checked all the people she came in contact with after coming in. There's no problem, the butler answered dutifully. Humph, Coeur sneered. A fox will always show its tail. Under Kel's intentional guidance, Ling Xiang almost searched the entire castle. Obviously, she did not find what she wanted in the end. But the blood breed banquet was about to begin, so she could only give up for now. The Feast of the Blood Breeds was held in the largest ancient castle of the Blood Breeds. This used to be the residence of the king, but after the king died, it was left empty. Occasionally, a family would hold a banquet here, and it became a public place. Ling Xiang and Coeur arrived at the castle together. The entire castle was surrounded by blooming roses. Ling Xiang was dressed in a gorgeous gown, and she held Coeur's arm as they walked into the castle. Even if it was fake, with such a face, it was hard not to notice it. This must be Her Highness Mi Nai? It's been so many years since we last met. You've become so beautiful. Ling Xiang smiled and accurately called out the other party's name. The other party was clearly flattered. Along the way, Ling Xiang could name 80% of the people who came up to greet her. The cold glint in Coeur's eyes grew stronger and stronger. Standing in the circle of vampire hunters, Ai Wei looked at the woman who was like the moon surrounded by stars and was slightly dazed. Her status in the blood breeds was actually so high. Second uncle. What's her identity? Ai Wei tugged at the sleeve of the man beside her. One of the vampire hunters heard this and answered for the man. That's Prince Coeur's adopted daughter. Her name is Mi Nai. Adopted daughter? Isn't she his biological daughter? Perhaps it was because Ai Wei was a member of the younger generation and looked quite likable, but that person continued to explain. Her family was wiped out in that great battle 100 years ago, leaving her all alone. I heard that Coeur and her father had a life-and-death friendship, so he adopted her. Don't underestimate her just because she's a girl. She has an important vote in this election. All vampires had the right to vote in the election of the new king, but this was only the preliminary election. Out of all the candidates, whoever had the most votes from the Pure Blood clan would be crowned king. Therefore, the votes of purebred vampires were very precious. That's amazing. Ai Wei had learned quite a lot from following these people around. So when she heard this, she couldn't help but feel a little strange. At that moment, Ai Wei saw Zhuo Lai enter with a beautiful woman. The two of them were very intimate. And although Zhuo Lai was expressionless, it was obvious that he cared a lot about the woman. Ai Wei's face paled. She looked in Zhuo Lai's direction in disbelief. The ones who came later are the big shots. Do you see that silver-haired man? His name is Rui Yi, Prince Coeur's eldest son. The person beside her was still explaining to Ai Wei. But Ai Wei wasn't listening at all. She only watched as Zhuo Lai and the beautiful woman wandered through the crowd. More and more vampires arrived, and the later ones came, the higher their status. Ai Wei felt out of place here. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it was hard for her to breathe. Shisheng drove around the ancient castle. The election had just begun, and the real highlight would be at night, so she had no intention of going in. Just as she was about to leave, she suddenly saw the female lead running out of the castle. Holy shit! Why is the female lead here? Ai Wei ran past her car, her face somewhat pale. Shisheng immediately followed. Where are you going? The car suddenly changed directions. Xiyin looked up at her. To watch the show. Shisheng followed the female lead at a distance. Ai Wei ran for a while before stopping. Seeing that there was no one around, she walked alone toward the sea of roses in the distance. This sea of roses seemed to connect with the sky, and the flowers here bloomed more brilliantly than anywhere else. Let's leave this place, Xiyin suddenly said. Shisheng's hand, which was about to open the car door, paused. What's wrong? I don't like the smell here. Xiyin frowned, a little like a child throwing a tantrum. Shisheng, isn't it just the same floral fragrance? What other smell is there? Crazy. Although that was what he thought, Shisheng still drove away. Xiyin looked at the sea of flowers in the rearview mirror, which was getting farther and farther away. A gust of wind came from somewhere, causing the sea of flowers to sway. The sea of flowers began to roll like waves, covering the sky and covering the earth as it surged toward them. Shi-in stretched his hand out of the car. The rolling sea of flowers in the rearview mirror suddenly calmed down. Chapter 287. Why are you sticking your hand out? Shisheng pulled Shi-in's hand back into the car and closed the car window. Shi-in gripped Shisheng's hand and smiled at him. Shisheng didn't pull his hand back. He continued driving with one hand and looked to the side. She saw it just now, that sea of flowers that had suddenly started rolling. But since Shi-in didn't want to talk about it, she didn't intend to ask. It had nothing to do with her. Shisheng parked the car in a deserted area. Shi-in suddenly leaned over and kissed the corner of her lips. After a moment he asked her in a low voice, "You clearly saw it. Why didn't you ask?" Shisheng pushed against his chest and backed away. "Do you want to tell me?" "If you want to know, I'll tell you." Shi-in looked at her seriously. Shisheng blinked. His handsome face was reflected in her eyes. Shi-in's eyes darkened, and he kissed her again. When Shi-in finally let go of Shisheng, Shisheng's face was a bit red. When did this guy become so good at kissing? She almost couldn't handle it. Many bloodlings have died in that place. Shi-in's voice was very soft. If it weren't for the fact that the car was very quiet, Shisheng probably wouldn't have heard him. She turned to look at Shi-in. Shi-in was looking at her with a faint smile on his lips. There was no warmth in that smile. It was oddly cold. "I killed them." Shi-in's lips moved. Shisheng stared at Shi-in, anger rising in his heart. He was actually testing her. This idiot. Shisheng took a few deep breaths to suppress his anger. He tugged at his lips. "I don't care what you've done, or what you want to do. Even if you want to kill the entire bloodlings right now, I'll still stand by your side. Do you understand?" Shi-in's tightly clenched fists slowly relaxed, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. He felt around his wrist for a moment, and Shisheng saw a red pendant appear in his hand. He took Shisheng's wrist and put it on for her. This is... If she remembered correctly, she had seen it in Minai's painting before. Was that child him? Where did Minai get that painting from? "It's just an ordinary bracelet, but it's something passed down in my family. It represents your identity," Shi-in explained in a low voice. "My identity as Shi-in's wife." Shi-in raised his head and planted a gentle kiss on the corner of her lips. "This is your own choice, Minai. There's no turning back for you." Shisheng sneered, pinched his face and said viciously, "Who wants to go back? I wish we could live and die together." Shi-in seemed to be pleased. "To be my Shi-in's woman, you must have this kind of awareness. If I live, you can't die. If I die, you can't live either." Shisheng raised his eyebrows. Compared to him, Shisheng felt that he was more selfish. Every man for himself, not to mention that she liked him. It didn't matter now. She would find him eventually. But this guy didn't even propose to her, so how could they be married just like that? Wishful thinking. The bracelet would disappear when it was on Shi-in's wrist, but it wouldn't when it was on Shisheng's wrist. Shisheng leaned against the driver's seat and swung his wrist, unable to take his eyes off the sparkling pendant. Shi-in looked at her childish behavior with amusement. "That painting." Shisheng put down his hand and turned around, a hesitant expression on his face. "My mother painted it," Shi-in answered naturally. "That's only half of it. There's still the other half. I'll take you to see it when I have time." She lifted Shisheng from the driver's seat and placed him on her lap. Her fingertips brushed against the red string on his wrist, and she rested her chin on his shoulder. "I've never seen this painting in its entirety. My mother said that when I find the other half of it someday, that person will bring me hope. But there's a huge age gap between us." Shisheng was dumbfounded. What era was Shi-in's mother from? How could she be so sure that the painting would end up in a girl's hands? What if it ended up in a man's hands? Shi-in held Shisheng's hand and didn't say anything else. The most important thing was that they had met, right? The two of them chatted in the car until night fell. Only then did Shisheng remember that he still had work to do. Beauty misleads. Shisheng rubbed Shi-in's head. Shi-in's hair stood on end, making him look very adorable. Shisheng almost couldn't resist doing him in the car. Beauty misleads. If this was in ancient times, she would definitely be a fatuous ruler. The ancient castle was brightly lit at night, and the fragrance of roses filled the air. Shisheng was still wearing the same black dress as before. He held on to Shi Yin's arm as they walked into the castle. Please show me your invitation. The attendant standing guard outside the castle was a little puzzled. Why were they so late? But the two of them were really good-looking. When they stood together, it was as if they were a match made in heaven. The woman looked a little familiar. Shisheng couldn't use the invitation in his hand, so she looked at Shi Yin. Shi Yin. Why are you looking at me? I don't have an invitation. Fine, it's not that I don't have one. I just threw it away. Shisheng. What happened to being pretentious? As a great villain, shouldn't you be showing your face? Shi Yin felt very wronged. Their levels were too low, so they didn't recognize him. The two of them communicated silently with their eyes. The attendant beside them looked at them strangely. Were they trying to sneak into the banquet? Shisheng was irritated. What the hell were they pretending to be pretentious for? They couldn't even get in. Shisheng took out her phone and asked Rui to come out and pick her up. Rui had probably just come out from a pile of women. He was full of the fragrance of roses, and his clothes were still twisted from being pulled. Little princess, why are you blocked outside again? Rui went forward to give Shisheng a bear hug. Shisheng hurriedly hid behind Shi Yin. When Rui was about a palm's width away from Shi Yin, he abruptly stopped, and his expression changed. He slowly put down his arms and bowed like an aristocrat. Lord Shi Yin. But in his heart he kept complaining. Lord Shi Yin? He couldn't even get through the door. His little princess would only suffer if she followed him. No, he had to quickly correct his little princess's worldview and find a good man. Shi Yin's lips curled up slightly. Brother-in-law, there's no need to be so polite. What the hell? What kind of address was brother-in-law? Rui looked up at Shisheng. Shisheng's eyes curved into crescents as he raised his wrist and waved it. When Rui saw the thing on Shisheng's wrist, his expression changed again. He couldn't help but look at Shi Yin a little more carefully. He tugged at his clothes and straightened his posture. With a straight face he said seriously, "Call me brother-in-law, a few more times." Shisheng. Why aren't you following the script? Shi Yin was also a little speechless by Rui's reaction, but he still called her a few times. After all, they were her family. Even though they weren't blood relatives, she still seemed to like them quite a bit. Shisheng's strange gaze drifted toward Shi Yin. This great villain was very down to earth. Fine. Don't think that I'll accept you just because you called me that. Let me tell you, if my little princess suffers even the slightest bit of injustice, I'll skin you alive. Rui led the two of them inside. They left behind a group of dumbfounded attendants. Was that Her Highness Minai just now? Didn't Her Highness Minai arrive a long time ago? When did she leave? Why didn't they see her? Also, when did Her Highness Minai have a partner? Shisheng. My heart hurts when I can't sleep with my partner. I need votes to comfort myself. P.S. What do you want to see in the next plane? Chapter 288. Shisheng didn't disturb the others when he entered, merely waiting quietly in a corner with Shi Yin. Because most of her body was blocked by Shi Yin, no one noticed that she looked exactly the same as the dazzling Ling Xiang. Shisheng's quiet demeanor made Shi Yin feel very strange. This didn't fit her personality at all. Shi Yin secretly tightened his grip on Shisheng's hand. The rich fragrance of roses wafted through the entire hall. Shisheng's gaze landed on the rectangular dining table at the side of the hall. There were many beautiful cups on it, each filled with a bright red liquid. That was where the rose fragrance came from. Shi Yin seemed to have noticed her gaze and pulled her into his embrace. He explained in a low voice, "That's rice wine. It can make you feel full, but it's addictive." "The one you gave me?" I'm sorry." Shi Yin didn't hide it. Fortunately, he only gave her one cup. Shisheng didn't react, looking away after a brief glance. The vampire hunters and vampires were clearly divided into camps, each occupying a side of the hall. Of course, some of the vampire hunters and vampires interacted with each other, but their interactions were limited to greeting each other. Shisheng saw Duju among the vampire hunters. Duju's expression didn't look too good, and he kept saying something to the person beside him. The person beside him didn't seem to agree, and the more Duju spoke, the more agitated he became. Suddenly, he smashed the wine glass in his hand. The sound of glass shattering caused the entire hall to fall silent. Everyone turned to look in his direction. If you won't speak, then I will. This matter doesn't concern us humans, but vampires as well. Duju's powerful voice reverberated through the silent hall. Duju. The elder who had been talking to Duju yelled. What does Mr. Du want to say? Ku-er walked over from the vampire's side and stood in the middle, looking at Duju inquisitively. Duju, don't speak nonsense. The elder wanted to pull Duju back, but Duju pushed him away. He adjusted his glasses and walked forward to stand in front of Ku-er. Does Mr. Ku-er know that your adopted daughter has violated the treaty in the human world and killed people at will? Ku-er's eyes narrowed as he looked at Ling Xiang. Ling Xiang seemed to be shocked by this news as well, her expression somewhat dazed. Everyone's gazes turned to Ling Xiang. Violating the first clause of the treaty is punishable by death. Why would Her Highness Minai kill someone? Why would Her Highness Minai violate the treaty? Perhaps they're just looking for trouble. I think so too. Vampire hunters and us are natural enemies. They must be framing us. Kerr ignored the discussions and calmly asked, Mr. Dean, do you have any evidence? Duju took out his phone and showed Ku-er the video. The first video was a side profile, but that face was too iconic. Even if it was just a side profile, it would not be mistaken. The person in the video was biting the neck of a human and drinking his blood. The second video was when the school was besieged. The cameraman didn't manage to capture the scene where Shisheng and Ling Xiang appeared at the same time. He only managed to capture the scene where Ling Xiang sucked the blood and revealed her face. This is the evidence. Duju raised his voice, his eyes shining brightly. I wonder how Prince Ku-er will explain this. Rui stood behind Ku-er, the expression on his face changing unpredictably. His little princess would not eat so roughly. It must be that imposter. However, that imposter was using his little princess's name. If this matter wasn't handled well, in the end, the one who would be criticized would still be the little princess. Ku-er, let your girl explain. One of the princes spoke up, his gaze on the vampire hunters extremely unfriendly. Although they had internal strife, at a time like this, they naturally had to side with their own people. Ku-er looked at Ling Xiang. Ling Xiang lifted the hem of her dress and walked to Ku-er's side, glancing at Duju first. Duju's sharp gaze caused her to shrink back in fear. She explained in a small voice, Godfather, I didn't. They're slandering me. Minai girl, you have to show evidence. A rather ugly man among the princes stepped forward. He wasn't exactly ugly, but there was a scar on his face that affected his looks. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he stared at Ling Xiang, the pressure pressing down on her. Fei Qi. Ku-er scolded in a low voice. The man called Fei Qi snorted. Ku-er, why are you being so loud? Did you do something shameful? If your goddaughter didn't do anything wrong, we vampires naturally wouldn't watch her be slandered. But if she violated the agreement, we can't cover it up either. Otherwise, what's the point of the agreement established 100 years ago? Ku-er's gaze on Fei Qi immediately turned subtle. The other princes remained silent, each with their own ideas. If your Highness Minai can produce evidence to prove her innocence, then this matter is our fault. We will apologize to your Highness Minai. Seeing that the situation had developed to this point, the elder also stepped forward to speak up. I really didn't. Ling Xiang defended herself, her expression anxious. Godfather, you have to believe me. Minai girl, this isn't something you can just say. You have to have evidence. Everyone present probably knew what was going on from Fei Qi's expression of kicking someone while they were down. He was using the vampire hunters to cause trouble. Among the princes, Fei Qi and Ku-er were the strongest. The two of them had been competing in secret for many years. Fei Qi naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. Fei Qi, do you know what you're doing? Ku-er's expression turned completely cold. He was actually helping an outsider. I'm doing this for the sake of the vampire race's stability. No one wants to have someone who breaks the agreement and affects the peace, right? Fei Qi continued. We're princes. We can't cover up the wrongdoer just because she's a relative, can we? Fei Qi was forcing Ku'er to make a decision. Bending the law in front of the vampire hunters would definitely incur their displeasure. Godfather, I really didn't do it. Ling Xiang kept insisting that she hadn't done it, but she didn't provide any evidence. Shisheng watched for a while before breaking into a grin. He came to a conclusion. She's trying to start a war. As for her motive, according to Ku'er, she was looking for something but couldn't find it. She was probably trying to take advantage of the chaos to find it. Shisheng cupped his chin as he watched the argument escalate into a verbal battle. In the end, someone was so infuriated that he was about to attack. During this time, Ling Xiang's role was to insist that she hadn't done it, but she didn't provide any evidence or question the contents of the video. This allowed anyone with a slightly more vivid imagination to come up with a plot in a matter of minutes. Fei Qi, on the other hand, was a little more subtle. He was constantly infuriating Ku'er, as if he wanted to join forces with the vampire hunters to drag Ku'er down. It was such a big show, but the master behind the imposter hadn't revealed a single trace of himself. He had really put in a lot of effort. Shisheng's lips curled into a cold smile. At some point, his iron sword had already appeared in his hand. After watching them sing for so long, it was time for her to put on a show and make them turn over a new leaf. It's the end of the month. Begging for monthly votes. I can't be short on recommendation votes either. Chapter 289. Just as they were about to attack, a loud crash came from the corner. The glass fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Everyone instinctively looked in that direction. Seeing the person standing there clearly, the group of people was instantly dumbfounded. Why were there two Minai? Shisheng jumped over the broken glass and walked straight to the center of the room. Her black dress swayed, and the red roses on it swayed. She held an iron sword in her hand, and her murderous aura was terrifying to look at. The people in her way instinctively moved aside. When Ling Xiang saw Shisheng, her expression turned ugly. Why was she here? Shouldn't she be trapped in Master's array? Why was she here? What's with all the commotion? Are you all here to attack me? Shisheng didn't even look at Ling Xiang. Instead, she turned to look at Du Ju. Her lips tugged into a sinister smile. Mr. Du, you've gotten even bolder. Du Ju had already learned from his own people that there were two identical Minai. This was also why the old man had stopped him earlier. Du Ju was almost certain that this sword-wielding woman was the Minai who had once stood by Shi Yin's side. There was probably no one else who could replicate that arrogant gaze. Who are you? Fei Qi demanded harshly. Are you blind? Can't you recognize me? Do you want to see an ophthalmologist? Shisheng's cold gaze drifted toward Fei Qi. Fei Qi, this little brat sure is arrogant. How dare he talk to me like that? Ku'er. Arguing with a junior was beneath his status, so Fei Qi yelled at Ku'er. This was his adopted daughter, so he should give her an explanation. What are you yelling at? Shisheng suddenly swung her sword. It didn't look like she used much strength, as if she was just casually swinging her sword. However, a formless energy was sent out by the sword and swept towards Fei Qi. Fei Qi reacted extremely quickly and dodged, but the item behind him was smashed into pieces. Everyone who had escaped death stared in shock at the iron sword in Shisheng's hand. This ordinary-looking iron sword was actually this powerful? It was too scary. Does it feel good to impersonate me? Shisheng looked at Ling Xiang after Fei Qi stopped talking. Come, let's talk about life. Ling Xiang panicked. Her body involuntarily retreated as she glanced around. She must have been discovered long ago, which was why this family treated her so coldly. Good sister, where do you think you're going? Ling Xiang felt a chill run down her spine. Ruei and two other men had blocked her path of retreat. Ruei quickly grabbed her by the neck. You even dare to impersonate my family's little princess. Who gave you the guts? Woo-woo. As expected, they all knew. But he still played her like a monkey. What's going on? The audience, who were still in a daze, also wanted to know. Wasn't this saying that Minai had violated the treaty? How could there be a second Minai? Kaer cleared his throat. This woman is impersonating Minai, but I don't know what her motives are, so I let her stay. Kaer's voice was neither fast nor slow, and his explanation was easy to understand. It didn't take long for everyone present to understand. Who killed that person? Whether it was the fake Minai or the real Minai, they were both vampires. I dare swear on my title as a prince that Minai has nothing to do with this matter. Kaer's expression was solemn. To swear on one's title as a prince was akin to swearing a deadly oath. Most of the vampires believed him. Fei Qi, however, smirked. That's just your side of the story. Who knows which one is real and which one is fake? Who's the one who violated the treaty? Fei Qi, why are you always targeting me? A dangerous glint appeared in Kaer's eyes. Because he's a traitor, Shisheng interjected. Little girl, what nonsense are you spouting? Fei Qi was instantly enraged. Shisheng seemed to be frightened, and retreated a few steps. I'm just saying. Why are you so agitated? Could it be that he's really a traitor? Nonsense. Fei Qi roared, then calmed down. I'm a vampire prince. I have status and everything. Why would I want to be a traitor? Who knows, maybe you want to be a king. Kaer looked at Shisheng, who seemed to be spouting nonsense. For some reason, he suddenly believed her words. Fei Qi had always been fighting for power with him, and now he was helping the vampire hunters, but he didn't dare to speak without evidence. Stop changing the subject. We're talking about you and this woman. Which one of you is the real Minai? And which one is the murderer? Fei Qi roared in exasperation. Idiot. Who are you scolding? I'm scolding you. Fei Qi's blood pressure soared. If the other princes hadn't held him back, he would have attacked already. Cough cough. Prince Kaer, we don't want to know about your internal grudges. The elder among the vampire hunters coughed and drew attention to himself. Right now we just want to know who the real Minai is. A bunch of idiots. Shisheng began to attack indiscriminately. Kaer. Was his daughter scolding him as well? Little girl, don't be so arrogant. The elder's expression darkened. Shisheng stabbed the iron sword into the ground. The floor, made of some unknown material, immediately cracked open, and the iron sword stuck firmly in the crack. The surrounding people once again revealed a horrified expression, and took a few steps back one after another. What does it have to do with you whether I'm arrogant or not? Can you kill me? Shisheng attacked the elder without holding back. Elder. Duju had experience being angered by Shisheng before. He quickly supported the elder and whispered something into his ear. Although he didn't see Shein, who knew if that person was here. Sure enough, the elder calmed down. If she really had that person backing her up, she did have the right to be arrogant. Even if she really did kill someone, as long as that person spoke, they couldn't do anything to her. Shisheng let go of the iron sword. With a flip of her wrist, a ring appeared in her fair palm. She slipped the ring onto her index finger. Seeing the ring, the vampires all lowered their heads. Shisheng raised his hand high and turned in a circle. Fei Qi's expression was extremely ugly. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times, but in the end, he didn't say a word. Since Her Highness Minai's identity has been confirmed, then this impostor. The vampire peacemaker spoke up again. How can you be so sure that she's the real Minai? Some of the vampire hunters were unconvinced. It was just a ring. What if someone stole it? The peacemaker looked at the person who asked the question like he was an idiot, but still explained. Her Highness Minai is a purebred vampire. Her ring was passed down in her family, so only she can wear it. If anyone else tries to wear it, only death awaits them. The elder coughed, and those who wanted to cause trouble immediately quieted down. Shisheng put the ring away, drew his sword, and walked towards Ling Xiang, who was being held by Rue Yi. What do you want? Ling Xiang's face was pale, but the bright red lipstick on her lips made her look like a bloody maw. I'll give you two choices. Shisheng's eyes curved into crescents. Asterisk little fairy. I'll give you two choices. Vote or have sex. It's the end of the month, and the monthly tickets are about to expire. Give them all to me, sob sob sob. Chapter 290. Just as Ling Xiang thought Shi Sheng was going to ask her who her master was, she heard her say, "Do you want to die horizontally or vertically?" "Ling Xiang, aren't you going to ask who my master is?" The people around them also had strange looks on their faces. Shouldn't she be asking why she was impersonating her? "I'll give you 3 seconds to consider." Ling Xiang's entire body began to tremble. She chose not to die. "Master, there's a monster here. Save me." 3. Shi Sheng smiled as he raised his hand. The cold glint of his sword pierced Ling Xiang's heart with lightning speed. Ling Xiang's eyes widened. "Didn't you say 3 seconds? Did you eat 1 or 2? Why does it hurt so much? Bloodlings were immortal. Normal things couldn't kill her. But why did she feel like she was only a step away from death? So cold." Du Ju only reacted after Ling Xiang's body turned to ash. No one had expected her to act so suddenly. "Minai, why did you kill her? She's impersonating you, and you haven't even figured out her motive. Why are you in such a hurry to kill her? Are you feeling guilty?" Shi Sheng leisurely wiped the blood off his iron sword. "Guilty of what? Du Ju? Who the hell knows what you're guilty of? Besides, I've already guessed her motive. Why can't I kill her?" Shi Sheng turned to look at Du Ju. "Mr. Du, do you want to die too? I don't mind sending you on your way." Du Ju. What motive does she have? Fei Qi looked at Shi Sheng with cold eyes. This little girl was so small back then. Who would have thought that after so many years, she would grow to this extent? "Why should I tell you, traitor?" "Minai, you have to be responsible for your words. You keep saying that I'm a traitor, but what proof do you have?" Fei Qi's eyes were about to spit fire. "I have freedom of speech. If I want to say it, I'll say it. If you don't like it, just hold it in." Coeur. His daughter seemed to be a bit too arrogant. Really? The little princess was a grandmaster at drawing hatred. Fei Qi was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. "Coeur, look at the daughter you've brought up. She's indeed a mother who didn't teach her." Fei Qi. Coeur's face was dark. "Don't forget how you managed to keep your life back then." Fitch was suddenly speechless. "All right, this matter ends here." Kerr's intimidating gaze swept across the surroundings. Du Ju and the old man glanced at each other, but they didn't pursue the matter any further. Coeur ordered people to rearrange the venue, and the crowd dispersed. Shi Sheng and Coeur stood together. From time to time, they would glance at her. "Little princess, why did you say that old man Fei Qi is a mole?" Rui asked the Shi Sheng curiously. "Because he looks like a mole," Shi Sheng said with a straight face. "Rui, this joke wasn't funny at all." "Stinky girl, don't try to fool your brother. Do you know something?" Shi Sheng glanced in Fei Qi's direction. Fei Qi was also looking at her. Shi Sheng gave him a provocative look, causing Fei Qi to turn his head away in anger. Shi Sheng turned back and said casually, "I heard him talking to a vampire hunter. Their conversation was a little strange." Shi Sheng pointed at a man not far away. "That's him. Someone from the AI family." Coeur frowned. "The AI family? AI Wei's family?" The plot didn't mention that AI Wei's family was a vampire hunter family. Fine, the plot didn't mention this vampire banquet at all. AI Wei had never been here, so the plot didn't mention AI Wei's family. Her blood was so special, so she definitely wasn't from an ordinary family. What did they talk about? Coeur retracted his gaze, his expression grave. "It's all nonsense." Coeur's mouth twitched. "Nonsense? How do you know he's a mole? Godfather." "Forget it. This was her godfather, so she shouldn't insult him." "Have you ever seen Fei Qi talk nonsense with anyone?" Fei Qi was a person with a high status. Even when speaking to the princes, he acted like he was a cut above them. How could he possibly lower himself to talk to a vampire hunter? And that vampire hunter didn't even look like a core member. "Then didn't you alert him just now?" Rui was shocked. What does that have to do with me?" Shi Sheng blinked innocently. "I'm not responsible for stopping him from rebelling." "Coeur, why do I suddenly feel like I've been abandoned?" "Rui, it's not your imagination, it is. When did the little princess's personality become like this? It must be that Shi-in who led his little princess astray." "Godfather, don't worry. If Fei Qi dares to touch you, I'll send him down to find someone to play mahjong with. Although she didn't care what Fei Qi wanted to do, she would protect Ku'er and Rue Yi. Ku'er's face darkened. When did his daughter become so arrogant? He didn't even dare to say something like sending Fei Qi down to find someone to play mahjong with. But she said it as casually as if she was eating something today. Then you should know who sent someone to impersonate you. I don't know. I'm not a god, how would I know? I don't know how you killed her. Rue Yi's expression changed. He thought she knew who the mastermind was, which was why he didn't stop her. Shisheng looked at the two of them with an enigmatic expression. Godfather, strength proves everything. They wanted to scheme against her? Did they think she was as easy to scheme against as those idiots on the streets? Ku'er and Rue Yi only had one thought in their minds right now. They really wanted to beat her up. But one couldn't bear to do it, while the other didn't dare. The rest of the banquet went smoothly. The election would be held the next day, so the banquet ended at 3 in the morning. Shisheng and Xiyin left through a side door where there weren't many people. Outside, the stars shone resplendently and covered the ground with silver frost. Hungry? Xiyin held her hand and asked in a low voice. Shisheng rubbed his stomach. After drinking Xiyin's blood last time, he hadn't felt hungry for a long time. But now that Xiyin asked, she suddenly felt a little hungry. A little. Wait for us, Minai. Someone called out to her from behind, interrupting Xiyin. Zuolai caught up from behind. He'd seen Xiyin in school before, but thought he was too good-looking. He didn't know that Xiyin was also a vampire, so he couldn't help but look at him with an inquisitive gaze. Something's up. Why did the male lead call for her instead of the female lead? Zuolai retracted his gaze from Xiyin, his expression turning serious. You offended Fei Qi today. Be careful. Perhaps afraid that Shisheng would misunderstand, Zuolai quickly explained. Fei Qi is a very vengeful person. You also have an election ballot, so be careful. Shisheng was dumbfounded. I don't understand the male lead's thoughts at all. What's the meaning of him suddenly showing goodwill to me, BBB? She could understand why he wanted to rope her in before, but now? She'd already expressed that she wouldn't support him, so why was the male lead still trying to get close to her? With me here, she'll be fine. A cold smile appeared on Xiyin's face. Zuolai's expression froze for a moment. This man's hostility. Xiyin. You want to steal my wife? Dream on. Chapter 291. After Zuolai left, Shisheng immediately asked Xiyin. What did you want to say just now? Xiyin's ears reddened and his gaze wandered. Let's talk when we get back. No matter how Shisheng asked, Xiyin didn't answer. Shisheng drove back to the villa listlessly. The night breeze carried a strong floral scent. It blew in through the car window and into Shisheng's face. The entire car was filled with that strong fragrance. Shisheng controlled the steering wheel with one hand and propped up his chin with the other. No one knew what he was thinking. Someone's following us, Xiyin suddenly said. Shisheng blinked, lowered his hand, and looked in the rearview mirror. A car was parked in the distance on the swaying path. The driver probably didn't want to startle them, so he didn't turn on the headlights. Just then, the car behind them suddenly sped up, looking like it was about to crash into them. Black shadows flashed in the surrounding flowers. Someone's delivering their heads to us. Shisheng stopped the car and turned to Xiyin. Get off the bus. Don't spill any blood. Xiyin. Why did that sound so wrong? The two of them quickly got out of the car and ran in opposite directions. In the next second, the car behind them crashed into their car. With a loud bang, both cars exploded at the same time. Sparks flew everywhere, illuminating the surroundings. Several black shadows dashed toward Shisheng at the same time. Shisheng swung his iron sword. The fastest black shadow fell straight to the ground. The black shadows clearly paused for a moment. Shisheng wasn't stupid enough to wait for them to react. His iron sword was like the Grim Reaper's scythe, swiftly reaping the heads of the black shadows. The last black shadow fell and turned into ashes. Bloodlings, this bunch of idiots. They want to deal with me with so few people? They're looking down on me too much. Shisheng jumped out of the rose bushes and onto the road. Shein stood in a place where the light of the fire couldn't reach, his expression indifferent as he looked at the burning car. Looks like we'll have to walk back. Shisheng's voice came from beside him. He tilted his head slightly, allowing Shisheng to catch a glimpse of the golden light that flashed through his eyes. It was brilliant and colorful. He took Shisheng's hand and said, "I'll give you a present tomorrow." "What gift?" "I want you more. Just pack yourself up and give it to me. Girls should be reserved. Being reserved won't feed me. Besides, what's wrong with me wanting my own man?" Shein chuckled softly. The two of them walked further and further away, finally disappearing into the darkness. When they returned to the villa, Shein went to the bathroom to take a shower while Shisheng tapped away on his laptop. By the time Shein came out, Shisheng had already uploaded the latest chapter. Don't ask her where the vampires got the net. It would be strange if the vampires didn't even have an internet connection. Go take a shower. Shein took out a set of pajamas from the closet and handed it to Shisheng. Shisheng closed his laptop and caressed Shiyin's hand before taking his clothes to take a shower. Shein caressed the back of his hand and lowered his head with a smile. He lifted the blanket and lay down. When Shisheng came out, Shein seemed to have fallen asleep. Shisheng sighed. Her life was so hard. She quietly climbed into bed. As soon as she lay down, Shein leaned over and pressed his slightly cool body against hers. Shisheng caressed him. Damn, he's not wearing any clothes. It feels good. Let's touch him a little more. She was just about to move her hand down when Shein suddenly flipped over and pressed her under his body, kissing her without warning. How could Shisheng hold back when Shein suddenly took the initiative? Satisfied, he devoured him clean. It was probably the first time, so Shein seemed a little unfamiliar and nervous. However, he got much better after that. The night was quiet, and the ground was covered in silver dust. When Shein woke up the next day, it was almost noon. He propped himself up and sat up. There was no one beside him, and he was already dressed. Shiyin's face heated up when he thought about what happened last night. He sat for a while, and was about to get out of bed when Shisheng came in. "You're awake. I thought you were going to sleep until the afternoon." Shisheng looked pleased with himself. "Do you want to do it again, young man?" Shein. Was there any point in teasing him? Shisheng looked at Shein sitting on the bed in a daze. His hair was messy, and he looked so adorable. "I really want to hide you." Shisheng walked over and pounced on him, tormenting him for a while. Shein played along with her. When she was done, he hugged her and lay down on the bed. He had never felt this way before. When he woke up in the morning, there was someone to play with. His side was no longer lonely. He could see someone standing beside him at any time, just within reach. The election for the new king didn't take place as scheduled. It was brought forward. Shisheng received a call from Rui and rushed to the castle with Shein. This time no one dared to stop her. She entered without a hitch. "Little princess." Rui appeared out of nowhere. Her expression changed. "You." The little princess had Shiyin's scent on her. When a vampire confirmed a mate, they would infuse their mate with their scent. It was like a symbol, a mark. Rui glared at Shein. Shein pursed his lips and smiled. Rui harumphed and turned to Shisheng. "Something happened. Let's go to father first." After hearing their story, Shisheng finally understood what had happened. Last night, a sea of roses not far from the castle had been set ablaze. The entire area had turned into a sea of fire. As a result, a new king was born. There were records of this among the vampires. Rising from the ashes, a new king descends, bringing light and a new life. This was a prophecy. The situation for the vampires had been bad these past few years. So many of them believed in this prophecy. They hoped that a new king would bring them new life and hope. But someone really did walk out of the fire. The vampires who believed in this prophecy recognized the new king on the spot. Tonight's election became a coronation ceremony for the new king. Shisheng thought of the female lead he had seen yesterday. He was probably going to spill some blood again. "Little princess, why do you think that old man Feiqi recognized her so quickly? He has his eyes on the throne." This was what Rui couldn't figure out. If Feiqi hadn't taken the lead, there probably wouldn't have been so many vampires who recognized this strange new king. Maybe she's the one he's been waiting for all this time. Shisheng's lips curled up in an irresponsible manner. Ruiyi frowned. Little princess, what do you mean? Shisheng shrugged. It's just a guess. This was all based on one's imagination. She had written so many melodramatic stories. It was easy to guess how the plot would develop. But she didn't plan to tell Ruiyi. After all, she was just shooting her mouth off. She had no proof. Ruiyi looked at Shisheng suspiciously. Shisheng gave him a helpless expression. There were many more vampires than yesterday. Even the vampire hunters had arrived. Fei Qi arrived late with his men. He walked to the front of the stage. Everyone quiet down. Once everyone had quieted down, Fei Qi continued. I'm sure you've all heard the reason why I invited everyone here in advance. Yes, that's right. The new king has been born. She came according to the prophecy and is destined to be the king. If you have any questions, you can ask them later. Now let us welcome our new king. Chapter 292. Her Majesty Ai Wei. As Fei Qi spoke, the lights in the castle dimmed, leaving only the main entrance and the red-carpeted path leading to the stage. Under the confused, curious, and complicated gazes of the crowd, a petite figure appeared at the main entrance. She was dressed in an intricate gown with attendants following behind her. The light shone on her, making her look magnificent. Ai Wei looked a little nervous, walking very slowly. Shisheng stood at the front. Her simple black gown made her stand out among the luxurious gowns. Ai Wei spotted her immediately, probably because she didn't want to embarrass herself in front of Shisheng. She puffed out her chest and followed the light to the stage. When she passed by Shisheng, she purposely slowed down her pace. Just yesterday, when Ai Wei found out about Ai Wei's noble status, she'd felt an indescribable feeling. But today, Ai Wei's status was higher than hers. This was the so-called "the river flows east for 30 years, then the river flows west for 30 years. Shisheng expressionlessly watched as Ai Wei proudly walked past her. I knew it was her. The female lead is a mystical creature who has fortuitous encounters no matter where she goes. What are you so proud of? Even I would be scared if I were to be hung up. The other vampires were in a flurry of discussion. Some acknowledged her status, while others objected. Ai Wei became nervous again when she heard the commotion below. She'd never been in such a big situation before. Fortunately, Fei Qi was there to help her, so she didn't have stage fright. Now that the new queen has been appointed, according to the rules, the authority in the hands of the various princes should be redistributed to Her Majesty. Fei Qi's gaze intentionally swept towards Ku'er. Ku'er looked at him coldly. How long has Fei Qi been planning this? He was the first to support the new queen. The new queen, who didn't know anything, would naturally listen to him. When the time came, all the authority would be in Fei Qi's hands. The new queen would be nothing more than a puppet. The true ruler would still be Fei Qi. The moment he said this, the crowd exploded. They'd held power for 100 years. How could they accept it if they suddenly had to hand it over? There were also some who had the same thoughts as Ku'er. But now, most of them believed that this young queen would bring them a new lease of life. If they rashly objected, they'd definitely be attacked by these people. The wise vampires chose to keep their mouths shut. When Ai Wei saw that a fight was about to break out below, she subconsciously glanced at Fei Qi. Don't worry, Your Majesty. You're now the ruler of the blood race. They won't dare to disobey you. Fei Qi comforted Ai Wei. Tell them that you will distribute the rights fairly, and that you still need their support. Will they really listen to me? How could she not be nervous when she was suddenly promoted from an ordinary person to a vampire king? I will. Fitch nodded seriously. Ai Wei glanced at the people below. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Zuelai, who was standing in the middle of the crowd, silently watching her. Her heart suddenly began to thump. She was now the queen of the blood kindred. She was the same as Zuelai. Did that mean that she could be with him? But, not long ago, she had hated the vampires so much, but now, she had become the queen of the vampires. Now that things had come to this, she had no way out. She could only brace herself and move forward. Ai Wei took a deep breath. He couldn't bring himself to say it. Ai Wei tugged at her skirt. What should I do? I can't bring myself to say it. Fei Qi could probably tell that Ai Wei was nervous. Quiet. What's with all the commotion? Due to Fei Qi's status, the crowd immediately quieted down. Ai Wei grew increasingly nervous as more and more people watched her. She was even worse off than the noisy crowd from before. Fei Qi was a little exasperated. He lowered his voice and reminded her, "Your Majesty, say something." "I can't say anything." Just as Ai Wei was about to cry, she suddenly saw the mocking smile on Shisheng's face. There was probably a kind of motivation called unwillingness to admit defeat and jealousy. She clenched her teeth. "I know everyone is doubting me, but I didn't want this to happen. I'm just an ordinary university student. I was completely unprepared for this to happen." Fei Qi's expression changed. What nonsense is this girl spouting? Just as he was about to tell her to shut up, her tone changed. "But since it's already become a reality, I won't run away from it. I'll study hard. I hope everyone can support me." Fei Qi sighed in relief. Although she hadn't said it very well, it could still be considered sincere. If she had said it too well, it would have sounded more like a rehearsal. It would have raised suspicions. Ai Wei's down-to-earth speech unexpectedly gained a lot of support. The princes who sided with Fei Qi directly handed over their authority. If there was a first, there would be a second. The new king had Fei Qi's support. None of them had as much authority as Fei Qi. Not to mention the fact that the new king also had the title of having a prophecy come true. In the end, only Ku-er was left among the princes. "Godfather, if you don't want to hand it over, then so be it." Shisheng looked at Ku-er with a faint smile on his face, but his tone was extremely arrogant. The hall was very quiet right now. Many people had heard Shisheng's words. "Minai, what are you planning? Are you rebelling?" Fei Qi was most worried about this troublemaker. Not a single person he'd sent out last night had returned. This morning, he'd only found the exploded car and the murdered vampires. "If I wanted to rebel, you'd be lying on the ground already." Shisheng laughed arrogantly. "Forget it. I've been tired after all these years." Ku-er shook his head at Shisheng. "Since Fei Qi wants it, I'll give it to him." He'd long since stopped caring about these trivial matters. When Fei Qi heard Ku-er's words, he didn't even have time to pursue Shisheng's rebellious words. Fei Qi hadn't expected things to go so smoothly. He looked very happy. Next, it was time for the various clans to get to know the new king. The vampire hunters also sent out a representative to give a simple congratulatory speech. They'd only been invited to witness the birth of the new king, so they had no right to interfere with who was chosen. The last step was for Ai Wei to accept the crown representing the vampire king. Ai Wei watched as Fei Qi walked towards her with the crown in his hands. The nervousness in her eyes finally receded a little. She was the vampire king. In the future, that woman Minai would have to bow respectfully whenever she saw her. Just as Ai Wei was about to accept the crown representing the vampire king, Xiyin suddenly walked out. Shisheng was stunned by Xiyin's actions. "Xiyin, what are you doing?" Shisheng followed after him. Her voice drew everyone's attention to them. Xiyin rubbed Shisheng's head. "Didn't I say I was going to give you a present yesterday?" "Shisheng." "He did say that, but she didn't take it to heart at all. This guy can't be thinking of killing all the vampires, right? It's such a great day, don't be so bloody. I'm still a baby." Xiyin. Fei Qi froze when he saw the person who'd stepped out. Why is he here? Yesterday, Xiyin had been standing in a corner without showing his face. Today his head was lowered, so it wasn't strange that Fei Qi hadn't noticed him. But now that he'd stepped out, if he still couldn't recognize him, then he'd have lived in vain. Xiyin. "I'm going to show off. Do you want to vote?" Chapter 293. Fei Qi's expression changed rapidly. In the end, he suppressed his anger and walked down from the stage. "Lord Xiyin." The other grand princes also had strange expressions, but they all stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Lord Xiyin." When the crowd saw the Grand Prince's actions and heard how they addressed him, they quickly thought of a certain person, and their expressions changed. They all bowed, their attitudes respectful yet cautious. Lord Xiyin. Ai Wei was dumbfounded. She had no idea what was going on. This man, is he a vampire too? And here I thought you didn't recognize me. Shi Yin's lips curled into a disdainful smile. I wouldn't dare. Fei Qi lowered his head even further. Why is he here? Flooded his mind. More importantly, he's with me Nai. No wonder Ku'er gave up his authority so easily. So he was waiting for me here. With Lord Xiyin here, even the new queen would have to bow her head to him, let alone me. He's the most powerful vampire in terms of seniority. Who would dare find trouble with him? Aside from a few who knew the inside story, the rest of the vampire hunters were just as dumbfounded as Ai Wei. Who is this man? He's so awesome. Just by standing there, all the vampires bowed. There was a faint smile on Shi Yin's face. Bring me the crown. Fei Qi. What does Lord Xiyin want with the crown? Lord Xiyin. Xiyin interrupted Fei Qi. I don't want to repeat myself. Fei Qi froze in place for a moment. Gritting his teeth, he turned around and brought the crown to Xiyin. Shi Yin's slender fingers took the crown. Under everyone's confused and shocked gazes, he placed it on Shisheng's head. A gift for you. He was willing to carry her to the throne. Shisheng. But I don't want it. I only want you. Fei Qi and the other grand princes were stunned. The new queen has changed hands just like that? Fei Qi braced himself and said, Lord Xiyin, Her Majesty Ai Wei came because of the prophecy. Your actions will put the vampires to death. Xiyin was focused on straightening Shisheng's crown as he casually responded. He didn't care about the vampires' lives. He just wanted her to be happy. Very beautiful. Xiyin praised her with a smile. Shisheng took out a small mirror from somewhere and looked at himself in front of so many people. She looked like an idiot. How was she beautiful? Forget it. Even if it was a dog's tail, he had to accept it. There was a strange silence in the hall. The development of this matter was a bit strange. What? Do you want me to teach you how to greet the king? Xiyin narrowed his eyes and broke the silence. His tone was laced with traces of danger. Fei Qi suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. If he still had a sliver of hope earlier, then all that was left now was fear and trepidation. After glancing at the Shisheng, he finally knelt down on one knee unwillingly. This was the highest form of etiquette among the blood breeds. Normally, this was only done during the coronation of the blood breed king. Greetings, Your Majesty Minai. The surrounding people all knelt down. Greetings, Your Majesty Minai. Greetings, Your Majesty Minai. In view of your previous unfriendliness, all of you can kneel. I'm not such a magnanimous person. I turned to Ku'er and said, Godfather, please get up. Thank you, Your Majesty. Ku'er sighed inwardly. He hadn't expected Xiyin to do this. If he had, he wouldn't have lowered his head to Fei Qi. Xiyin was much more powerful than that prophecy or whatever it was. Fei Qi could only curse inwardly, not daring to move an inch. He'd clearly planned everything out and was just one step away. But Xiyin, who shouldn't have appeared here, had appeared. And he'd even pushed me nigh to the throne. Second Uncle Ai, who was standing among the vampires, had a dark expression on his face. They were just one step away, but such a huge mistake had occurred. Only then did Ai Wei react and look at her second uncle. That man's identity was so powerful that he could make all the vampires acknowledge Minai with just one sentence. Shisheng had no intention of becoming the blood breed king. The only reason he had them kneel was to avenge a personal grudge. All that talk about separating public from private interests was nonsense. Revenge was the most important thing. No matter how angry Fei Qi was, he still had to kneel. However, his gaze toward Shisheng was somewhat unfriendly. What are you looking at? Shisheng took out his iron sword and stabbed it in front of Fei Qi. Why don't we talk about the traitor? Fei Qi gritted his teeth. He looked at the gleaming iron sword in front of him and endured it. Your Majesty, what will it take for you to believe me? Why should I believe you? Shisheng was amused. You're nobody to me. Does it matter if I believe you or not? Then does it matter if I'm the traitor or not? Fei Qi naturally didn't dare to say this. Shi-in stood to the side. That indulgent look on his face made it seem like he wouldn't stop her even if she wanted to kill him. Even if he couldn't afford to offend her, couldn't he just hide? Just like that, Shisheng inexplicably became the blood-breed king. Ai Wei seemed to have been forgotten. Shisheng didn't even look her in the eye from start to finish. Ai Wei felt like she'd been slapped dozens of times. Her cheeks burned with pain. She was a joke the entire time. Fei Qi's ancient castle. Second uncle Ai was furious. Fei Qi, you didn't tell me that Shi-in had awakened. Fei Qi's expression wasn't good either. I didn't know when he woke up either. He's a member of your race. You still don't know when he woke up. Second uncle Ai grew more agitated as he spoke. Shi-in rarely returns to the vampires. No one knows where he hibernates, so how would I know? Fei Qi was furious. Ai Chong, watch your attitude. He was still a prince. Even if they were working together, it didn't mean that Ai Chong could speak to him like this. The atmosphere between the two was somewhat tense. Ai Wei sat at the side, her face deathly pale. Her eyes were downcast, her thoughts unknown. Ai Chong probably knew that he'd been too agitated. After a moment of silence, he gradually calmed down. What do we do now? What do we do? What else can we do? Fei Qi sneered. With Shi-in here, do you think I'd dare to do anything? They'd personally witnessed that man's strength. Wasn't provoking him the same as digging their own graves? Then we're just going to give up on the plan? Ai Chong's face alternated between pale and pale. Fei Qi fell silent. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. You said that person disappeared. Ai Chong didn't know why Fei Qi had suddenly changed the topic, but he still suppressed his anger and replied, I only heard about it. I'm not sure. He wasn't a core member of the vampire hunters, so he had no way of knowing about such a major matter. He'd only overheard Du Ju's men discussing the discovery of a tomb in the northern suburbs of the city. It was very likely that person was buried there. If that person disappeared, it means that someone might want to make a move. We might still have a chance. Fei Qi's eyes were filled with calculation. Fei Qi leaned over and whispered a few words into Ai Chong's ear. Ai Chong narrowed his eyes and glanced in Ai Wei's direction. This is the only way. Think about it yourself. Fei Qi patted Ai Chong's shoulder and turned to leave the room, leaving Ai Chong and Ai Wei alone. Asterisk pleading votes. Chapter 294. Shisheng hadn't expected Fei Qi to show up so quickly. Ai Wei and a few other princes followed behind him. They didn't look friendly at all. Ai Wei's gaze toward Shisheng was now filled with hatred. As a stepmother, Shisheng didn't care at all. Shisheng blocked the door, showing no intention of letting them in. Your Majesty, how could you forget the etiquette of hospitality? Ke spoke up from behind. Shisheng remained unmoved. There's no need to entertain uninvited guests. They clearly knew she didn't welcome them. Yet they still came knocking on her door. Weren't they just courting death? Ke didn't say anything else. He just stood there quietly. Although he was Minai's adoptive father, she was still his queen. Fei Qi's expression was somewhat unsightly, but he didn't flare up. He still had to bow. Your Majesty, I've come today to discuss something with you. If you have something to say, say it. Fei Qi. Just what does Shi-in see in this woman? Not only is she rude, she's also ridiculously arrogant. Fei Qi took a deep breath and told himself not to get angry. Only then did he say, it's like this. Ai Wei came because of the prophecy. Regardless of whether it's true or not, it was left behind by our ancestors. Us old fellows have discussed and decided to give Ai Wei the status of Holy Maiden. This way, even if the prophecy is true, there won't be any conflicts. What do you think, Your Majesty? Holy Maiden. What are these old farts up to now? The Holy Maiden of the vampires was almost equal in status to the Vampire King. However, every Holy Maiden had made outstanding contributions to the vampires. That was why they were bestowed the title. All right. Just as Fei Qi was about to convince her, Shisheng lightly spat out 2 words. These 2 words stunned Fei Qi. He agreed so easily? If you're done you can scram. Shi Sheng's impolite attitude put Fei Qi in a difficult spot. But when he thought about how he'd achieved his goal, he decided not to argue with Shi Sheng, and left with his men. After they left, Ku Er stepped forward with a gloomy expression. Your Majesty, why did you agree? If they want it, then just give it to them. Shi Sheng didn't care at all. Instead he asked, does Godfather care about the throne? Godfather has long grown tired of fighting for power. There was a hint of nostalgia on Ker's face. The blood breeds weren't like this in the past. Since that's the case, I don't want to care about them anymore. Then foster father and Rui should leave this place and take a look at the human world. Kaer frowned slightly. Looking at Shi Sheng's smiling face, he didn't ask anything. She was no longer the little girl who had lost her parents and hugged him and cried bitterly. She had grown up. All right. He had spent his entire life in the vampire race and hadn't had the chance to see the outside world. When Rui heard that he could go outside, he immediately tossed all thoughts of his beloved little princess to the back of his mind and eagerly left with Ku Er. The vampires realized that their new queen didn't care much about their affairs. They couldn't even find her if they needed help. Even if they found her, she would be impatient and tell them to find someone else. He did not take back the power of the princes, nor did he issue any new policies. It was almost the same as when there was no king. That's not right either. The new king conferred a saintess. Because of what had happened before, they had accepted this saintess very well. Shi Sheng didn't care, so Ai Wei gradually became the one in charge. Shi Sheng was like a vampire king in name only. But the person in question didn't care at all. She ate, drank, and played with Xiyin every day. Xiyin, I thought of something. Shi Sheng pushed open the bathroom door. Amid the splashing water, a man's muscular body was faintly discernible. Xiyin was a little embarrassed. He grabbed a towel and quickly covered his body. Where haven't I seen it before? What's the point of covering it up? Shi Sheng despised Xiyin's behavior. Xiyin paused. In the end, he didn't wrap the towel around himself. Instead, he turned off the water, his ears red. What is it? Shi Sheng leaned against the bathroom door. How did you get that injury on your back when I brought you home? Xiyin paused in his wiping, his eyes darkening. Shi Sheng took the towel from his hand and wiped the water off his body. You can't tell me? Then forget it. I was just asking casually. No. Xiyin followed Shi Sheng's lead and put on his clothes. I just don't know how to say it. Shi Sheng pushed him out and made him sit on the bed. He took out a hairdryer and helped him dry his wet hair. The hairdryer was a little noisy, so neither of them spoke. Only after the hairdryer and the noise was turned off did Shi Sheng ask, have you thought of how to say it? Xiyin glanced at Shi Sheng, then suddenly leaned forward and nibbled on her lips. His low voice traveled into Shi Sheng's ears. You remember Sikong Sa from Rose Academy, right? Because the plot had been edited out. She only knew that this guy wasn't a good person. In the end, he was killed by the male and female leads. As for the details, she didn't know. But what did this guy have to do with Xiyin? He's also a vampire, and he's always wanted to resurrect someone. Resurrect? Are you kidding me? In the cultivation world, resurrecting someone required a huge price. Xiyin nodded. He seems to want to get something from me, but I don't know what it is. When he met Shi Sheng, he had just woken up and his body was still weak. Who knew that Sikong Sa would come looking for him? Looks like that woman was also sent by Sikong Sa, impersonating me and getting close to Ku Er. Looking for something, Shi Sheng's rarely used brain was turning. Just as she reached a critical juncture, she suddenly felt a chill on her body. At some point, Xiyin had pressed her down on the bed and stripped her of her clothes. Shi Sheng. Wasn't he so shy just now? Why was he so proactive now? His mouth said no, but his body was very honest. Perhaps Shi Sheng had tossed and turned too much, for Xiyin fell into a deep sleep. Shi Sheng put on a jacket and stood in front of the window. A cool breeze brushed past her cheeks, and the rich, somewhat stuffy fragrance of flowers swirled around the tip of her nose. She let her thoughts wander and pondered casually. Sikong Sa, Ai Wei. What did he want to do by getting close to Ai Wei? Resurrection, looking for something. Nai, you have to protect this painting well. You can't let anyone else get it. It's your life, understand? A memory suddenly surfaced in Shisheng's mind, jolting her back to reality. The original owner of this body didn't have this memory. Someone had erased this part of her memory. The painting. That painting hanging on her wall? Nai's memories had never revealed how she had obtained that painting. What if her parents had given it to her and then erased her memories? Shein said that the painting wasn't complete. That painting was very important. Even more important than Nai's life. What kind of secret was hidden in it? Was it resurrection? Shisheng rushed to Shiyin's bedside. She was about to wake him up when she saw his peaceful sleeping face with a faint blush. Shisheng paused. There's no hurry. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Shisheng climbed into bed and snuggled into Shiyin's arms. Shiyin unconsciously pulled her into his embrace, and the two of them fell asleep in an intimate position. Chapter 295. Two figures were slowly making their way deeper into the mountain forest shrouded in smoke. Their surroundings were very quiet. Not even the chirping of insects could be heard. It was as though they had entered a world of vacuum. The place you chose is quite interesting. Shisheng leaned against a tree trunk and panted. How much longer do we have to walk? There are countless vampires who want to kill me while I'm asleep. Shiyin walked over quickly and crouched down in front of Shisheng. I'll carry you. Shisheng didn't hesitate and climbed onto Shiyin's back. Shiyin walked steadily but not slowly. He finally stopped at a cliff and put Shisheng down. Shisheng didn't even have time to ask before Shiyin jumped down with her in his arms. The wind blew against her face, freezing her to the bone. Shisheng. Jumping off a cliff at the slightest disagreement? Shouldn't you at least be mentally prepared? Fortunately, the cliff wasn't very deep, so they quickly reached the bottom. It was a little dark down there, so Shiyin carried Shisheng and walked forward. Finally, they entered a cave. There was a semi-transparent glass coffin in the middle of the cave. There was nothing else inside. Shiyin opened the coffin and rummaged around at the bottom for a while before taking out a rectangular box. The box was carved with flowers, birds, and auspicious clouds. It wasn't locked, but Shisheng didn't open it. Shiyin smiled as he bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. The box clicked open on its own. This anti-theft technology is simply amazing. Shisheng opened the box. There was a painting inside. He took out the painting and unfurled it. Just like her painting, there were roses that covered the sky and earth, as if they were soaked in blood. What was different from her painting was that there was no one in this painting, only a coffin that was entangled by countless roses and vines, faintly revealing some color. Shisheng looked at the glass coffin behind Shiyin with a strange expression. This is it. Shiyin placed Shisheng's hand on the glass coffin. Shisheng immediately felt an enormous amount of spiritual energy converge on him. Even in the cultivation plane, one could only sense such dense spiritual power in some of the immortal marshes. But this glass coffin, Shisheng's expression changed. He put the coffin back into the space and said, "Let's go back." Shiyin's eyes flashed when he saw the huge glass coffin disappear, but he didn't ask any questions. When Shisheng said go back, he didn't mean go back to the vampires, but to the villa in the human world. She went straight to her bedroom. The painting was still hanging on the wall. Shisheng took it down and joined it with Shiyin's painting. The place where the flower was split was a particularly large rose, and the color was brighter than the other parts. If you looked at it separately, you wouldn't be able to tell anything. You would only think that the person who drew it did it on purpose. However, when you put them together, you would realize that the flower was different. But there was something wrong with the connection between the three. What did the boy mean? Was it Shiyin? What was that flower referring to? The only thing that was clear was the glass coffin. Shiyin looked at Shisheng quietly. Seeing her frown, he reached out and stroked her forehead. If you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. I don't like hidden threats, especially when it's related to you. Shisheng stared at the two paintings without looking up. Nai, you have to protect this painting well. You can't let anyone get their hands on it. It's your life, understand? Shisheng didn't know why, but he suddenly remembered this. If Minai's parents had warned her, then did Shiyin's parents tell him? Did your parents say anything to you? Shiyin furrowed his brows. It had been too long, and he almost couldn't remember. But when he saw Shisheng's serious expression, he tried his best to recall. When his mother had given him the painting, other than telling him that there was another half to it, she told me to protect this bracelet well. Shiyin's fingers slid over the pendant on Shisheng's wrist. His attitude was even more serious than when he'd given the painting to him. Shisheng raised his wrist and examined it for a moment. The crescent-shaped pendant wasn't big, and it was dark green in color. But when light passed through it, it would show a faint yellow color. Time slowly passed. After who knew how much time had passed, Shisheng closed the painting. His tense little face finally revealed a hint of a smile. I understand. The pendant, the glass coffin, and AI Wei. There was probably something inside the pendant, and the glass coffin provided a large amount of spirit energy. As for AI Wei, it was probably a special blood vessel or a special vessel, or perhaps both. After listening to Shisheng's analysis, Shiyin couldn't help but feel astonished. She'd managed to connect the dots with so few clues? Shisheng only revealed an enigmatic smile. She hadn't analyzed the plot at all. She'd followed the author's train of thought. Combined with the clues she'd gathered, it wasn't hard for her to come to a conclusion. It was all a ploy. Of course, the most important thing was that she was smart. Sikong Sa would come knocking on her door sooner or later for these things. Shisheng's intention was to destroy one of them. But she couldn't bear to part with the bracelet, and Shiyin said she couldn't destroy the glass coffin. In the end, only the female lead was left. Did she have to destroy the female lead? Perhaps the female lead had been misled by Sikong Sa in the first place. Speaking of which, this female lead was quite unlucky. She'd been used from the start. If it weren't for the male lead, she probably wouldn't have survived to the end. She hadn't even done anything this time, but the female lead had already dug her own grave. Life wasn't static. Any small matter could change a person's life. Shisheng left Shiyin at home and went to Liang Ji's house alone. Before she left, she'd told Liang Gu she could go out, so Liang Gu wasn't home when she arrived. After a while, Liang Gu finally returned. "Senior, you're back." Liang Ji's face was full of surprise. Then she excitedly surrounded Shisheng, her eyes sparkling. Did someone cause trouble for you?" Shisheng nodded casually. She checked the villa just now. The talisman hadn't been touched. No. Liang Gu shook her head. Ever since Senior left, the school had calmed down. The people who'd been watching her house had also retreated. That's good. Shisheng patted Liang Ji's head. Then I'm leaving. Huh. So fast. Liang Gu looked at Shisheng in disappointment. Shisheng's lips twitched into a smile. I still have things to do. I'll return to school after I'm done. Only then did the disappointment on Liang Ji's face fade a little. Then be careful, Senior. Shisheng left the villa, intending to go to the vampire hunter headquarters alone. However, he hadn't gone far when he ran into Shiyin. He smiled at Shisheng and opened the car door behind him. Let's go together. Shisheng paused for a moment, then got in. How did you know what I was going to do? I saw you looking up information on them. Shiyin drove the car onto the highway. You're my wife. Do you think it's appropriate for you to keep this from me? Minai. Shiyin was a little helpless. You're the one who needs to be spoiled. Why did she always want to spoil him? He was a man, all right? If it were any other man, he'd have quit doing such a shameful thing. Since you're so disobedient, you can think of a way to make it up to me when we get back. Shisheng cupped his face. Can I pay with my body? Shiyin suppressed his laughter. Sure. Asterisk little fairy. Can you guys vote for Shisheng to pay with his body? Chapter 296. The headquarters of the vampire hunters was underground. At this moment, all the core members were gathered in the conference room. Du Ju sat at the head of the table, and a surgery was being broadcasted on the screen behind him. The people in the conference room didn't even dare to breathe loudly as they stared at the screen. Soon, however, Their faces were filled with disappointment. Buzz. Mr. Du, the surgery failed. Someone in the operating room reported to Du Ju. Du Ju's expression darkened. Understood. Team leader, should we give up on this experiment? The people over there have been investigating recently. If they were found to have conducted this experiment, they would definitely be secretly executed by those people. Ordinary vampires have no way of completing the experiment, and we can't catch any purebred ones. Team leader, I also agree with giving up. Everyone leave. Du Ju didn't reply, instead chasing everyone out. Team leader, someone is looking for you outside. The person who had just left returned. Looking for me? Who is it? I don't know, but he looks quite young. Du Ju frowned. To be able to find this place. I understand. Du Ju stood up and walked out. As he pushed open the door to the conference room, a strange look flashed across his eyes. The man sitting on the leather sofa heard the sound and raised his head slightly, a smile on his feminine face. Mr. Du, have you considered my proposal? Du Ju adjusted his glasses. Why did you come looking for me? He had met this man when he left the vampire clan, but before that he had seen him before. Sikongsa, a student from Rose Academy. He had even provided him with information on Minai, but he had never imagined that he was also a vampire, and he had hidden it so well that even he hadn't noticed. Because Mr. Du has the ability. Sikongsa appeared very calm. I can provide you with research materials. Isn't this what Mr. Du is lacking right now? Du Ju recalled the failed surgery and couldn't help but be tempted. If there were purebred vampires. What do you want me to do for you? Du Ju decided that as long as the conditions weren't excessive, there was no harm in agreeing. Don't worry, Mr. Du, I just need your help with a small operation in the future. Du Ju's gaze swept over Sikongsa. After a moment of silence, he said, I will consider it. Then I will wait for your good news. However, Sikongsa didn't receive any news from Du Ju. Du Ju was in a severe coma and could die at any moment. Fortunately, there weren't many higher-ups at the vampire hunter headquarters that day. However, when they were cleaning up the ruins, they discovered a secret laboratory built even further underground. The things inside made the vampire hunters feel apprehensive. Du Ju had been experimenting on vampires and humans. This kind of experiment was not allowed. The BHA began to investigate the matter, and everyone involved was arrested. There were vampires in the BHA in the first place. They immediately sent word to the vampires upon seeing such an incident. The vampires demanded an explanation from the vampire hunters. The ones conducting the experiments were humans, and the vampires were the victims. The vampire hunters had no way of quibbling. But how could they explain this? The people involved were still unconscious. He could only appease the vampires. But how could this kind of thing be appeased? It didn't take long for both sides to start fighting. As the instigator of this incident, Shisheng secretly made things difficult for the vampire hunters. Not long after, the BHA disbanded. The treaty of the BHA was officially nullified. After 100 years of truce, the vampires and the vampire hunters once again began their war. The number of deaths around the world soared. The country's special forces joined the investigation and tried to mediate between the two sides. But when the special forces saw the information the vampires threw in front of them, they fell silent. It would be strange if the vampires didn't explode when their own people were captured and treated like this. This matter instantly became troublesome. The special forces requested to see the vampire king. But the other party told them that they hadn't seen the king in a long time, and that they should go find him themselves. In the end, the special forces negotiated with the vampires on one condition. The vampires would no longer target ordinary people. Shisheng and Xiyin returned to the vampires' territory. The vampires seemed a little empty. They had probably gone out to fight or hunt for food. When they returned to the castle, the butler saw Shisheng and cried tears of joy. King, you're finally back. Lord Xiyin. Seeing Xiyin behind Shisheng, the butler immediately lowered his head. Shisheng walked inside. What's the matter? The vampires and... I know. You don't have to say anything about this. Shisheng interrupted the butler. The butler was stunned. The king and Lord Shi'in should have returned from outside, so they definitely knew about this. Tell me about the other news. Yes. The butler told him everything that had happened after Shisheng left the vampires. She hadn't touched the authority of the vampires, so without her around, those people could handle things very well. But to Shisheng's surprise, the princes actually handed over their authority, and the one they handed over was Holy Maiden Ai Wei. When did Ai Wei become so smart? But that night, someone came to invite her to see Ai Wei. Yes, invite her, the king, to see the Holy Maiden. What a big face. How long has it been? And she's already trying to usurp the throne. King, please be punctual tonight. Before the messenger could finish speaking, Shisheng grabbed a vase on the table and threw it at the messenger. I'm not in charge. Don't you even know the rules? The messenger was hit squarely. Although it didn't hurt much, he was still so frightened that he trembled and knelt on the ground. King, please calm your anger. This subordinate is just following orders. Following orders, huh? Shisheng sneered. Go back and tell Ai Wei that if she wants to see me, she can come here herself. Scram. Yes. The messenger scrambled out of the room. Because Shisheng wasn't in charge, people like them trusted Ai Wei more. Without Shi'in, Ai Wei would be the king. Thus, there were many who were dissatisfied with Shisheng. Ai Wei had gotten used to being flattered by these people. With Fei Qi's help, the feeling of being high and mighty made her forget that she wasn't the king. Only when she heard the messenger's reply did she remember that woman was the king of the vampires. But now that the power was in her hands, Ai Wei had nothing to fear. Ai Wei dressed up and went to the castle to see Shisheng. Accompanying her was a handsome man. The butler welcomed her in, his attitude polite and impeccable. But she didn't see any sign of Shisheng. Where's King? Ai Wei looked around but didn't see anyone. She couldn't help but frown. The butler stood respectfully to the side and replied warmly, Holy Maiden, please wait for a moment. Ai Wei glanced at the man beside her. The man smiled slightly, indicating for her to calm down. She waited for a few hours, and the housekeeper simply asked her to wait for a moment. In her heart, Ai Wei was cursing Shisheng. This woman actually dared to play around with me. Asterisk pleading votes. Chapter 297. Just as Ai Wei was getting impatient from waiting, Shisheng finally arrived. Shi'in carefully supported her body, as if afraid she'd fall. Ai Wei couldn't help but curse inwardly. So pretentious. It's just walking. Do you think you'll fall? Shisheng sat down on the main seat and yawned slightly. His lazy gaze landed on the man beside Ai Wei, and his lips couldn't help but curl up a little. Senior, long time no see. Minai, I've underestimated you. She could even break through the 5 elements formation he'd set up. Now you know. Don't underestimate me in the future. Shisheng's eyes curved into crescents. No matter how you looked at it, the smile on his lips felt mocking. Sikongsa. This woman is so arrogant. Just how did she manage to live for so long? Sikongsa looked at Shi'in. Shiyin's head was lowered as he played with Shisheng's fingers. He didn't look at them at all. His attitude was one of complete disdain. Sikongsa's hands clenched into fists. Why are you looking for me? Are you here just to watch me, the queen? Sikongsa suppressed the displeasure in his heart, and a smile instantly appeared on his face. Mina, you don't have any power right now. How about we make a deal? Oh, you're making me a mere figurehead just to make a deal with me? Are you crazy? To her, power couldn't even compare to a single finger of Shiyin's. Without any real power, you're just a puppet. Then you want to make me a puppet? Shisheng started spouting nonsense. Sikongsa. Why is it so tiring to talk to her? She doesn't know how to take the bait at all. Minai, you know what Sikong means. Why play dumb? Ai Wei looked at Shisheng with a mocking expression. Oh, even the female lead has learned this skill. Fine, tell me. What kind of deal do you want to make with me? Since the female lead has spoken, I have to give her some face. You have a painting. Give it to Sikong, and we won't make things difficult for you. We'll let you leave the vampires. Say that again. Sheng's expression was strange. Am I hearing things? Does the female lead know what Sa wants? She's actually helping him. You will regret it in the future. Ai Wei was quite obedient. She repeated. I said, give the painting in your hand to Sikong, and we'll let you leave the territory. Oh my God, who gave you the guts to do that? If she wanted to leave the blood race, who would dare to stop her? He couldn't hack them to death. However, Sa had actually managed to find out where the painting was. As expected, he was quite capable. Sheng rolled his eyes and said, sure, but you have to promise me one thing. Me Nai, do you think you can still negotiate terms with me right now? Sikong had already said that Shein was nothing to fear. He could deal with him, so dealing with me Nai would be much easier. Why not? In any case, she was still the vampire queen, and she had Shein by her side. Why couldn't they negotiate? Take a look outside. A hint of pride appeared in Ai Wei's eyes. Sheng was unmoved. Ai Wei couldn't figure out what was going on with Sheng's behavior, so she could only ask Sa for help. Sa's attention had been focused on Shi's invisibility. Last time, he was able to injure him, so his strength should not be as strong as his. But why did he look like he didn't care at all? What terms do you have? If he could avoid fighting, he was willing to do so. Sikong. Ai Wei called out anxiously. How could he lower his head to her? The two of you just have to get married. Sheng's eyes curved into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. They were as calm as still water. Sa had no idea what Sheng was up to. Ai Wei also had a strange expression on her face. Her condition was for her to marry Sikong? What kind of condition was this? All right. To him, this condition was not harmful at all. See the guest out. Sheng's lips curved. Female lead, I'll wait for the moment you discover the truth. News of Ai Wei and Sa's marriage immediately spread throughout the blood race. The new vampires weren't familiar with Sa, but the older ones were. He was the previous queen's male pet. Sa was originally a human, but unexpectedly, the queen took a fancy to him and forced him to become a vampire. At the time, he had a very loving fiancée. In order to make Sa stay by her side wholeheartedly, the queen took control of his fiancée. In order to save his fiancée, Sa had no choice but to stay by the queen's side. The queen purposely let his fiancée see him having sex with her. In the end, his fiancée ran off herself and was sucked dry by the vampires. When Sa found out, he only asked the queen to let him bury his fiancée. The queen didn't agree at first, but Sa said something to her, and she finally agreed. After burying his fiancée, Sa stayed by the queen's side. Until the great battle 100 years ago. Sa schemed against the queen behind her back, then opened the blood race's barrier to lure the vampire hunters in. He himself was nowhere to be found. Now this person actually wanted to marry their holy maiden. Naturally, there were many who opposed this, but there were also those who supported it. For example, Fei Qi. Fei Qi already knew why Sa stayed by the queen's side. A long time ago, there was a legend about resurrection. The specifics of this legend were only known by the previous queen. Sa stayed by the queen's side to listen for this information. He wanted to resurrect his fiancée. Fei Qi learned from Ai Chang that Sa's fiancée had gone missing. He knew he could use this information to his advantage. Sa had no interest in power, and was a good partner to work with. Although the wedding took a lot of twists and turns, it was successfully held under Fei Qi's control. On the day of the wedding, Sa received a painting from Sheng. Sheng didn't swap the painting at all. He simply gave it to Sa as it was. The queen only told him that the secret of resurrection was in this painting. He studied it for several days but couldn't figure out anything. In the end, it was Ai Wei who pointed out that the coffin surrounded by roses was a bit strange. But even if he knew this, he couldn't do anything about it. He flipped through all the records of the blood race, but couldn't find any mention of this coffin. In the end, he had no choice but to seek out Sheng. Sheng looked at Sa like he was an idiot. Do you think I'll tell you? Me Nai, this isn't up to you. Sa waved his hand. and a group of people immediately rushed in. Whoa! Shisheng let out an odd exclamation. Minai, you'd better tell me, or none of your people will live. Shisheng's expression changed. You're threatening me? Who gave you the guts? Minai, don't test my patience. Even if I tell you, you might not believe me. Whether I believe you or not is my business. Shisheng was silent for a moment, then seemed to compromise. That glass coffin is with Fei Qi. Fei Qi. Xikong narrowed his eyes. You'd better not lie to me, or you'll have to bear the consequences. Shisheng didn't reply. Only after Xikong left did he smile. I's lying to you. It's not a good time to kill people. I want to see you dogs bite each other. Asterisk pleading for votes. Chapter 298. When a person saw that hope was right in front of them, yet they couldn't find the stairs to it, they'd panic. Xikong was currently in such a situation. In his heart, regardless of whether it was real or fake, he wanted to see for himself. However, Fei Qi was dumbfounded when he heard Xikong's request. Since when did he have a glass coffin in his house? Wasn't he just looking for trouble? Apparently, the two of them had almost fought over this matter. In the end, Xikong had forcefully searched Fei Qi's house. Reality proved it. Fei Qi really did have a glass coffin. Fei Qi couldn't even explain himself. He had no idea where this glass coffin had come from. However, Xikong believed that Fei Qi was trying to use this to threaten him, and their partnership fell apart. Before the vampires could settle their external strife, another internal strife arose. Fei Qi seemed to have given up a lot of power, but in reality, he still had a lot. Hence, when the two sides clashed, it was 50-50. Neither side had the upper hand. Shisheng, the proper vampire king, still hadn't made a move. After some thought, they realized it was normal. Although she was the vampire king, she didn't have the slightest bit of power. Most people understood that it was difficult for two hands to fight four fists. Hence, some of the vampires who were originally neutral slowly began to take sides. The internal strife had begun. However, what they didn't know was that the vampire king, whom they didn't think highly of, had played many dirty tricks in the dark for this civil war to happen. This war lasted for half a year, and in the end, Xikong emerged victorious. All authority in the vampire race was now in Xikong's hands. All of the vampires had chosen to forget about Shisheng. Xikong had also learned of the resurrection method from other sources. Xikong, you haven't had a good rest these past few days. Sleep early. Aiwei couldn't help but call out to him when she saw him standing by the bed. You sleep first, Xikong replied without turning his head. Then he left the room. Xikong. Aiwei watched as Xikong left without any hesitation. Her hands tightened around the covers. Xikong left the room and went to the basement. There was plenty of light down there. In one of the rooms in the basement, there was an ice coffin. A mummified corpse lay inside. One could vaguely make out that it was wearing a Qing dynasty qipao. Xikong looked at the mummified corpse in the ice coffin with a gentle gaze. He reached out and traced the mummified corpse's face on the ice coffin. We will be able to meet soon. Xikong stayed in the basement for quite a while before returning to his room. Aiwei had already fallen asleep. Xikong stood at the head of the bed, his eyes fixed on Aiwei. It was only when the sky outside began to brighten that he calmly lay down on the bed, held Aiwei in his arms and closed his eyes. The next day, not long after Xikong left the castle, someone came looking for Aiwei. Seeing Ai Chong with a broken arm, Aiwei's expression turned ugly. Her eyes were filled with anger and resentment. This second uncle of hers hadn't stood by her side at all when Xikong and Fei Qi were fighting. Instead, he'd fought with Fei Qi against them. In the end, he even wanted to kidnap her to threaten Xikong. Ai Chong's face was bitter. Xiaowei, I know you hate me, but I'm doing this for my family. You're only doing this for your own benefit. He wanted to have the right to speak amongst the vampire hunters, not because of some family. Ai Chong's expression became serious. Xiaowei, no matter what you think, second uncle, I'm here today to tell you something. Aiwei felt some resistance in her heart. Her intuition told her not to listen. However, her body didn't budge an inch. That night, Sikong-sa returned. When he saw Ai Wei sitting alone in her room in a daze, his gaze darkened. A trace of a smile appeared on his face before he walked over. He hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. "I'm sorry. I've wronged you these past few days." Ai Wei's body trembled involuntarily, her face instantly turning deathly pale. Sikong-sa stood behind her, so he couldn't see her expression. However, he could feel her body's reaction. "What's wrong?" Ai Wei resisted the trembling and forced back the tears in her eyes. She shook her head. "It's nothing. Too many things have happened recently. I'm a little..." As if she couldn't finish her sentence, she lowered her head and began to cry. Sikong-sa frowned slightly, but he didn't think much of it. He turned to face her and hugged her, comforting her in a low voice. "It's all in the past. Everything's fine now." Ai Wei grabbed Sikong-sa's clothes, her fingertips digging into her flesh through the fabric. "Is it all in the past?" No, Sikong-sa realized that Ai Wei had been acting a little strange these past few days. He couldn't help but feel worried. "Time's almost up. We mustn't make any mistakes in the next few days." He sent someone to keep an eye on Ai Wei. If it had been the past, Ai Wei might not have noticed, but ever since Ai Chong had told her those things, she'd started paying attention. This discovery caused her heart to turn cold. She had no choice but to believe Ai Chong's words. However, there was still a sliver of hope in her heart. That sliver of hope had prevented her from tearing apart that final layer of paper with Sikong-sa. July 15th. This was the time of the year when the yin qi was at its heaviest. "Xiao Wei, I'll take you to see something." Sikong-sa still looked at Ai Wei tenderly, as if she was the woman he loved the most. The last bit of warmth in Ai Wei's eyes dissipated. Her face stiffened as she nodded. Her voice was hoarse. "Okay." Sikong-sa brought Ai Wei to a mountaintop. The moon hung high in the sky like a jade plate. Clear and bright moonlight spilled onto the ground, coating it with layers of silver frost. Ai Wei's eyes were covered, and there was only darkness in front of her. Just like that, she walked step by step into a place where there was no light. "Why?" Ai Wei's voice was extremely soft. It was somewhat scattered by the mountain breeze. But Sikong-sa still heard it. He paused, and the two of them stopped at the same time. "You already know." "Why?" Ai Wei tore off the black cloth covering her eyes and screamed hysterically. "Why did you lie to me?" Her voice was carried far away by the wind in the dark mountains, startling the birds in the forest. The flapping of their wings added a bit of gloominess to the atmosphere. The gentleness on Sikong-sa's face disappeared, replaced by indifference. "Because I need you. But I'm innocent." Ai Wei's voice carried a hint of pleading. "Sikong, I'm innocent. I like you so much. Why are you doing this to me?" Sikong-sa looked at Ai Wei coldly, a hint of mockery in his eyes. "Like me? If you like me, then why did you go find Zuo behind my back?" Ai Wei's voice came to an abrupt halt, her eyes filled with panic. Sikong-sa took 2 steps forward and wrapped his fingers around Ai Wei's neck. "Did you think I didn't know? I couldn't tell that you liked me that much." "No. She had indeed gone to find Zuo, but he wasn't even willing to see her. Intense hatred suddenly burst forth from Sikong-sa's eyes. "What's more, you're the daughter of my enemy. Today's situation is all your mother's fault." "What are you talking about? What enemy's daughter?" Asterisk, ha ha ha. It's starting to torture the female lead. After torturing the female lead, it's time to torture Sikong-sa. One by one, they won't be able to escape. Chapter 299. Ai Wei stared blankly at Sikong-sa. Sikong-sa pushed her away. Ai Wei stumbled and fell onto the rocky ground. "Why do you think you survived that fire?" Memories of that fire flashed through Ai Wei's mind. The pain she'd experienced was frightening. "Why do you think the vampires recognized you based on a single prophecy, when there were so many of them? Why do you think Fei Qi helped you so much? She was human. How could she be recognized by the vampires?" She'd asked Fei Qi that before. But Fei Qi had said she was different. How was she different? She'd never met her parents. AI Chong had single-handedly raised her. AI Chong had said her parents had died long ago. Who was she? I drugged her back then, but I didn't expect her to still get pregnant. She even gave birth to you at the last moment. However, I still have to thank her. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where to find a special person like you. He wasn't the only man the queen had back then. Vampires had an extremely low chance of getting pregnant. He'd only been a low-level vampire back then. The only ones capable of impregnating the queen were those few purebred vampires by his side. Sikong Sa approached Ai Wei step by step, his expression sinister. You'll pay for your mother's sins. Ai Wei's mind was filled with disbelief. How could she be the daughter of the Vampire King? She was only 18. The Vampire King had been dead for so long. She couldn't possibly be the Vampire King's daughter. Impossible, and she didn't suck blood. She definitely couldn't be the Vampire King's daughter. She couldn't be. Sikong Sa picked Ai Wei up from the ground and strode towards the 2 coffins in the distance. Beneath the coffins was a drawing of the 8 trigrams. The 2 coffins were placed on the poles of yin and yang. Sikong Sa tossed Ai Wei into the empty ice coffin. Sikong, you must be mistaken. I'm not. Ai Wei grabbed Sikong Sa's hand. Her face as pale as paper. Think about it. I'm only 18. How could I be the daughter of the Vampire King? I don't have any desire to suck blood. I'm not a vampire. You must be mistaken. Sikong Sa pressed her into the ice coffin and looked down at her from above. Fei Qi sealed you away when you were born and hid you for almost 100 years. He only gave you to Ai Chong 18 years ago to raise. Of course you thought you were only 18 years old. Pausing for a moment he continued. You've never drunk blood before, so of course you wouldn't have any desire. But have you ever eaten anything after being in the blood clan for so long? Ai Wei was stunned. Ever since she'd arrived in the territory, she hadn't eaten anything. Her stomach had always been full. It's not like that. She wasn't. Ai Wei wanted to struggle, but she found that she couldn't move at all. She watched helplessly as Sikong Sa pricked her blood vessel with the needle. Blood flowed out from the tip of the needle and quickly filled up the thin tube connected to the needle. Sikong Sa led one end of the tube to another coffin. She could vaguely see a person lying inside. Ai Wei could feel the blood flowing out of her body rapidly, but she couldn't move. Why, none of this is right. Things shouldn't be like this. Ai Wei suddenly froze. What's going on? Sikong. She suddenly called out in a very weak voice. Sikong Sa turned around and looked at her. Ai Wei forced a smile onto her face. Can you hug me again? Sikong Sa remained unmoved. Seeing as we've been together before, can you hug me again? Sikong Sa hesitated for a moment, then bent down and hugged her. He quickly released her. As he stood up, Ai Wei exerted all the strength in her body and kissed him on the lips. Sikong Sa frowned and pushed her away forcefully, wiping his mouth in disgust. Ai Wei chuckled, then closed her eyes. Tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Why didn't I listen to Zuolai back then? If I'd been with Zuolai, I wouldn't have been used by Sikong Sa like this. So cold. There seemed to be the sound of a clock ticking in the air. At some point, the moon had moved to the center of the room. The array on the ground resonated with the moonlight, emitting a faint white light. Sikong Sa stood at the periphery, looking nervously at the glass coffins. The light from the array grew brighter and brighter, finally enveloping the 2 coffins. When the light dissipated, Sikong Sa rushed to the glass coffin. The mummified corpse inside was soaked in blood. The corpse, which had been well preserved, had rotted away in the blood, revealing the white bones. Ow! How could this be? Sikong Sa clung to the coffins, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could it fail? Why didn't she revive? Because you're still missing 2 things. A clear female voice came from the darkness. Sikong Sa's bloodshot eyes abruptly turned to the source of the voice. A girl in a long black dress slowly walked out of the darkness, followed by a tall man. Minai. Sikong Sa squeezed the words out from between his teeth. His bloodshot eyes seemed to want to tear her apart. Are you very angry? What's there to be angry about? You didn't ask me. That's why she didn't revive. It's all your fault, Shisheng said innocently with his arms crossed. Sikong-sa was so angry he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. If he asked her, would she tell him? I would. Shisheng seemed to know what Sikong-sa was thinking. After all, I'm a living Leifeng who loves to help others. Even if I tell you, you won't be able to get it. What does it matter if I tell you or not? What else is missing? Give it to me. Sikong-sa stood up and looked at Shisheng with a ferocious expression. Shisheng raised his hand and waved the pendant in his hand. This. Sikong-sa's mind exploded with a bang. That painting flashed through his mind. A person, a coffin. That person isn't talking about Ai Wei, but the pendant she's wearing? And you've also gotten the method wrong. Shisheng put down his hand and tossed a tattered book over. This is the correct resurrection method. You can't do without any of it. Sikong-sa's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. A total of 4 things were needed. The yellow spring water in the pendant, the glass coffin, the blood of a person of extreme een, and the blood-soaked roses. However, the book he had obtained recorded that. He turned to Shisheng and glared at Shisheng like an enraged lion. It's you. You swapped the books, didn't you? You're overthinking things. How would she know where Sikong-sa had gotten that method from? How would she know where he'd swapped the books? Shein had dug out this book from his family's abandoned castle. Give it to me. Sikong-sa suddenly rushed forward, trying to snatch the bracelet from Shisheng's hand. He still had a chance. He could still resurrect her. Shisheng dodged to the side, and Shein kicked Sikong-sa in the stomach. Sikong-sa flew backward, crashing into the glass coffin. The glass coffin flipped over, and the blood inside immediately flowed out. No. Even if you resurrect her, the price you have to pay is your death. If she lives and you die, what's the point? If you really love her that much, you should go down and accompany her. Shisheng stood in the distance, coldly watching as Sikong-sa lifted the glass coffin. Asterisk request votes. Double monthly votes. Request votes T to the power of T. Chapter 300. That's not right either. Maybe you're afraid of death. If you knew this method would cost you your life, would you still want to revive her? Shisheng's words were like a thorn, accurately stabbing into Sikong-sa's heart. His hand went limp, and the glass coffin fell to the ground once more. This time, even the corpse inside fell out. It was smashed by the heavy glass coffin and split in half. Sikong-sa stared blankly at the corpse that had been smashed into pieces by the glass coffin. Suddenly, his body went limp and he half knelt on the ground. He felt a burning pain on his lips, as though something was corroding his flesh. A wave of pain rose from his heart, slowly spreading to his limbs. This is Shisheng watched from afar as Sikong-sa suddenly knelt down. What the hell? Why is he kneeling before the fight? Ah! Sikong-sa suddenly raised his head and roared. His body was rotting at a speed visible to the naked eye. The innocent Shisheng. I didn't do anything, but he's about to die. He was poisoned by deity water. It's the most powerful thing vampire hunters use against vampires. Shein had appeared beside Shisheng at some point, and explained in a low voice. Shisheng recalled how Ai Wei had kissed Sikong-sa. This is really retribution? But why is Ai Wei fine? You were poisoned by this thing last time too? Shisheng asked calmly as he watched Sikong-sa's body rapidly corrode. Amen. Shisheng suddenly turned around, his face full of heartache. It hurts a lot, doesn't it? It doesn't hurt. Shein shook his head. Sikong-sa had used it on him back then. Sikong-sa himself had been afraid of touching it, so it was probably diluted and wasn't that effective. Shisheng reached out and touched Shiyin's back. That night, he'd only touched him once, but his fingers had gone numb for several days. What kind of pain did he have to endure back then? Sikong-sa's pained howls gradually died down. In the end, all that was left was a skeleton. When the wind blew, it turned into powder and melted into the pool of blood on the ground. Shisheng walked over to the ice coffin and looked inside. Ai Wei was long dead. She had died in the same way as Sikong-sa. Shisheng was silent for a moment. Then he and Shein went down the mountain. After they made their move, the mountain suddenly began to sink, burying everything in the earth. A conversation could be heard in the night wind. Does your heart ache when the glazed coffin is gone? You're still here. The internal strife of the vampires had just ended, and yet another one had arisen. Just as these people were fighting fiercely, Shisheng broke the blood race's enchantment. Some of the blood race members who couldn't freely enter and exit the blood race were able to leave. What's there to fight? The world outside is waiting for them. Thus, a large number of vampires flooded into the human world. In the previous incident, many vampire hunters had died. The sudden large-scale invasion of the vampires into the human world caught them off guard. Who knew which bastard taught the Blood Clan a political lesson? They would turn people into Blood Clan members after biting them. The blood breeds were growing like a virus. Even if the country organized people to encircle and annihilate them, the blood breeds would be able to regroup in a short period of time. Unless they destroyed the entire human race. The battle outside was in full swing, and the only paradise was Rose Academy. All the vampires subconsciously avoided this place. What a joke. The Vampire King and Lord Shi'in were both here. Was he going there to seek death? The Vampire King was the one who had come up with this plan. They used to think that the Vampire King didn't care about his duties, but he wasn't. He was doing great things. Conquering a single vampire was nothing. Conquering the entire human race was his greatest dream. At first, the humans couldn't accept it. Why would vampires that only existed in fiction appear in the real world? And why would they start such a large-scale war the moment they arrived? But in the end, they had no choice but to accept it. This was the real world, not a dream. Senior, what are you doing? Liang Ge saw Shisheng looking at her phone with a smile on her face. Curious, she moved closer to her. The phone was a live broadcast platform. The live broadcast was of a battle between humans and vampires. Liang Ge was no longer surprised by such occurrences. After all, her senior sister was the vampire queen. Senior. Liang Ge walked to Shisheng's side and stared at Shisheng with sparkling eyes. Senior, when are you going to embrace me? I want to become a vampire too. Shisheng slammed her phone down and propped up her chin, her brows raised. What's so good about being a vampire? You seem like a good person. Get married and have children. Vampires live a long life, and all that's left is loneliness. But then I won't be able to be with senior sister. Liang Ge pouted. How could I be lonely with senior sister? I have a man. Shisheng crossed her arms, her face full of fear. Don't even think about it. Liang Ge. Senior, what are you thinking? She simply liked her. Shisheng ignored the embrace, but Liang Ge had no intention of giving up. She continued to pester Shisheng. Currently, Rose Academy was filled with daughters of wealthy merchants. When the high-ranking officials learned that the Vampire King was inside, they didn't dare send their children there. Even if the outside world was dangerous, it was still better than staying by the Vampire King's side. But gradually, they discovered that the Vampire King didn't harm anyone at the academy. There was even a human girl by his side, and the two seemed to get along quite well. As the outside world became more and more dangerous, some people tried to send in unfavored children, but the other side didn't react at all. After confirming that Shisheng wouldn't harm the children, they boldly sent their children in. Rose Academy was immediately filled to the brim, giving the school a headache. Why did Rose Academy seem like a shelter for human children when the vampires and humans were fighting? Of course, the school knew that Rose Academy wasn't affected by the war because the Vampire King was inside. At first, these people were quite afraid, but after seeing the situation outside, they didn't want to go out at all. Thus, most people avoided Shisheng. As time passed, they discovered that the Vampire King was lazy to a whole new level. Everything he did had someone waiting on him. Sometimes it was that ridiculously handsome Shi'in. Other times it was the vice president of the student council, Liang Ge. In short, they used their lives to conclude that the Vampire King wasn't as repulsive as the rumors said. Thus, after they complained to their families, someone came to negotiate. They were from the country's special forces team. Vampires were a special race, and only people like them knew a thing or two about them. The meeting place was in the academy's conference room. Shisheng arrived early in the morning. He sat with his legs crossed, watching the live broadcast online. These reporters were risking their lives to broadcast, so he gave them a like. When the Special Forces team arrived, they were shocked to see that there was already someone in the conference room. They thought that this person would make them wait for a long time, but she arrived first. And she was so unpresentable. Shisheng turned off his phone, took his feet off the conference table, straightened his clothes, and sat down properly. Special Forces team. We all saw it. Shisheng. You can pretend you didn't see it. Please vote. Chapter 301. Miss Minai. The head of the Special Forces team was an elderly man. He looked kind and amiable, the kind that made people want to get close to him. But before he could finish, the girl opposite him waved her hand. You're all tired from standing. Sit down. Special Forces team. This vampire queen was truly a weirdo. Everyone took their seats. Elder Zhao coughed and spoke again. Miss Minai, this humble one is Zhao Fei, director of the National Special Forces team. Shisheng propped up her chin and tilted her head, her hair falling to the side of her face. You're called a Special Forces team. Why do you have to call the person in charge chief? Zhao Fei. Wouldn't calling him team leader make him seem unimpressive? But how was he supposed to explain this? Was he supposed to say that acting pretentious was more impressive? His old face couldn't say something so shameless. Zhao Fei smiled awkwardly. Miss Minai, your name isn't important. Today, we want to talk to you about the development of the two races. It looks like it's developing quite well. Zhao Fei. The bloodlings were developing quite well. Humans were about to become bloodlings. Flips table who said this girl was easy to talk to? Zhao Fei felt like his previous negotiation skills were completely useless. This girl didn't play by the rules at all. You want to make peace? Just as Zhao Fei was thinking about how to negotiate, the girl opposite him spoke up. Zhao Fei hurriedly smiled and nodded. If this continues, it won't be good for either race. I'm sure Miss Minai understands this. But Shisheng dragged out her words. Everyone in the conference room held their breaths, waiting for her to continue. You humans have dominated the world for so long. It's time for someone to take charge. Shisheng's eyes curved. Have you seen the world of dinosaurs? Special Forces team. Why was she talking about the world of dinosaurs again? Dinosaurs dominated the world for so long, but what was the result? Special Forces team. They didn't really understand this vampire queen's train of thought. Shisheng looked at them like she was looking at an idiot. Annihilation. They were all annihilated. So when it comes to world domination, it's better to take turns, lest the human race goes extinct. Besides, bloodlings have long lifespans. What's wrong with that? Human lifespans were too short. So many people in history wanted to live forever. Why would they reject such a good opportunity? What he said made sense. Bah, they were here to negotiate, not to be brainwashed. Miss Minai, looking at your age, I'm afraid you won't be able to live much longer. However, if you become a vampire, then you will have a longer life and can contribute more to the world. Am I right, Chief Zhao? Zhao Fei froze in place, not knowing how to react. The other people's faces were also twitching. Were they here to negotiate or to brainwash him? In the end, when the special team walked out of the conference room, they didn't even know what they had talked about with the Vampire King. Chief Zhao. The special task force member looked at Zhao Fei with a sad face. How was he going to explain this to his superiors? It was the Vampire King who brainwashed them the entire time. Zhao Fei sighed. Let's talk about it when we get back. This was the territory of the Vampire King. Several students walked past them, chatting and laughing. When they saw Shisheng emerge from inside, they bowed respectfully. Your Highness Minai, the Special Forces team. They must have come in the wrong way today. When they reached the campus and saw a group of youthful and energetic students moving about, they suddenly felt somewhat surreal. The outside world was so chaotic, but the people here were no different from before. They were dressed neatly. Although they looked worried, they still lived at ease. Because they were protected. The one who protected them wasn't their country, but the vampire king who had started the war. Zhao Fei brought his people back and made a simple report and analysis to the people in power. The vampire king clearly didn't want to negotiate, but his attitude was so good that they couldn't find fault with him even if they wanted to. After that, Zhao Fei brought his people to negotiate with Shisheng a few more times. Shisheng acted as if the doors of the vampire race were always open to them, and they were welcome to join. The only thing he refused to talk about was peace. Senior, why are you making things difficult for them? Liang Ge didn't understand. She clearly didn't want to bicker with them, but she had been making things difficult for them recently. I'm just toying with them. Shisheng looked down at the departing motorcade. When my vampire army takes over the world, they'll come begging me for mercy. When the people around them lived longer than them while they faced death, would they still be able to persevere? What was Senior talking about? Shisheng turned around and smiled faintly. It's nothing. Pack up. I'm taking you to meet someone. Meet who? Liang Ge quickly packed her things. You'll know when we get there. Shisheng and Liang Ge went downstairs. Shi Yin's car was already waiting downstairs. Liang Ge sat in the back. Senior Shi Yin. Shi Yin grunted in response, then looked at Shisheng. Haven't you had enough fun yet? Not yet. It's quite fun to see their confused faces. Life was so boring. How could he not have some fun? Shi Yin shook his head helplessly, then started the car and drove out of Rose Academy. Perhaps because Shisheng was here, and because there were many sons of rich businessmen in the school, the area around Rose Academy was very safe. There were even a few shops that were still open. Shi Yin parked the car outside a coffee shop. Liang Ge only dared to leave the school gates with Shisheng. Now that they were at the coffee shop, she got out of the car with a greedy expression and eagerly followed Shisheng and Shi Yin inside. The coffee shop had 2 floors. Shisheng went straight to the second floor. Little princess. Liang Ge saw a flamboyant boy dressed in colorful clothes pounce on her. Shisheng and Shi Yin both dodged to the side. The boy couldn't stop in time and fell on Liang Ge. Behind Liang Ge was a staircase. She was pushed back a few steps, missed a step, and tumbled down the stairs. Senior sister. Save me. Liang Ge felt herself being hugged by someone. The ceiling spun, and when she looked again, she was standing in front of Shisheng. Liang Ji's heart was beating extremely fast, and her mind was buzzing. 3 seconds later, she suddenly burst into tears. Senior. She was scared to death. Shisheng. In this scenario, shouldn't she be paying attention to Rue Yi, who was still hugging her? Wasn't it supposed to be love at first sight when the girl fell and the handsome boy saved her? Liang Ge only wanted to say that she was dizzy when she rolled down the stairs. How could she have seen clearly whether the person who saved her was a human or a ghost? It wasn't like they were filming a TV show. Liang Ge cried until she was out of breath. Rue Yi, the main culprit, was dumbfounded. Didn't he catch her? What was she crying for? She was scared by this. Humans were indeed fragile. Asterisk Rue Yi. Humans are so troublesome. Please vote. Chapter 302. In the end, Shisheng had to step in to appease Liang Ge. Once they were seated, Liang Ge saw Rue Yi's face clearly. She seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly became agitated. I've already apologized. What else do you want? Rue Yi was a bit impatient. No. Liang Ge was a bit embarrassed by Rue Yi's tone. She shrank back to Shisheng's side, but she kept looking at Rue Yi out of the corner of her eyes. Little princess, let me tell you. Rue Yi turned to look at Shisheng. His eyes immediately became gentle, and he began to spout nonsense. Shisheng listened quietly, occasionally asking a question. Kaer didn't come. Apparently, he went to the front lines. What did you say? Rue Yi suddenly stood up, his face filled with anger. Liang Ge, who had been in a daze, jumped in fright. She looked over in confusion, only to meet a pair of eyes filled with anger. Embrace her. Little princess, you want me to embrace a human? Rue Yi's voice grew louder. And she's so weak. Shisheng. Embracing a human required drinking blood. She couldn't do it. She didn't want Xiyin to touch anyone else, but this guy kept pestering her. She could only think of Rui. Then I'll go find foster father. You'll have another little sister in the future. No. He didn't want a little sister. Liang Ge was still in a daze. Was Senior talking about her? With this boy in front of her? In the end, although Rui was reluctant, he still agreed. Who told her to be his most beloved little princess? Liang Ge was still in a daze from beginning to end. It wasn't until she was alone with Rui that she snapped out of her daze. Why wasn't Senior the one embracing her? She wanted Senior to embrace her. If you don't want to, then forget it. I'll go talk to Senior. Liang Ge turned to leave. She wasn't willing either. Wah, Senior, you're tricking me. Rui pressed the door shut. It's too late to regret it now. He grabbed Liang Ji's hand and pressed her against the wall. The boy's handsome face quickly enlarged. She felt a sudden pain in her neck, and the sound of swallowing rang in her ears. Her body was a little weak. In order to suck more blood, Rui could only hold on to her waist to prevent her from sliding down. She could see the side of the boy's face. There were almost no pores on his smooth skin. It was as delicate as jade. Liang Ji's vision suddenly blurred, and tears fell uncontrollably. She seemed to hear the boy say something in a bad tone, but she did not hear it clearly. Her vision was plunged into darkness. When she woke up again, she was the only one left in the room. She touched her neck. It was very smooth and there were no wounds. What happened just now was like a dream. But she knew that it was not a dream. Shisheng was waiting for her outside the room. How is it? Do you feel any discomfort? Liang Ge dumbly shook her head. Am I a member of the blood clan now? She looked at Shisheng and moved her pale lips. Yes, Rui's embrace isn't any worse than mine. He's a 7th-generation vampire. That boy is called Rui? Liang Ji's expression grew even more dazed. What's wrong? The girl had been acting strange since just now. Liang Ge glanced at Shisheng and opened her mouth. In the end, she only shook her head and squeezed out a smile. Thank you, Senior. Shisheng had never been a curious person. If Liang Ge did not say anything, she would not ask. She took Xiyin's hand and led him downstairs. Let's go back. The negotiations between the countries were unsuccessful. In the end, they could only fight. However, the Blood Clan's forces had long since expanded to a certain extent. Although they grew weaker as time went on, they were still many times better than ordinary people. The Blood Clan won in the end. Shisheng did not do anything to the humans, nor did he govern them. They each did their own thing. The Blood Clan governed the Blood Clan, and the humans governed the humans. She only issued a few prohibitions. Killing humans was forbidden. Turning humans into Blood Clan members was forbidden. The world was filled with Blood Clan members. They had long lives, and the people around them were forever young while they themselves were aging. Those who once believed that humans were the right path had no choice but to waver. However, the Blood Clan King's orders were still there. The Blood Clan could no longer casually turn humans into Blood Clan members. As a result, it became common for humans to do everything possible to become Blood Clan members. However, the Blood Clan King had long since established an investigation department to deal with such matters. Once discovered, the consequences were severe. There was not much difference in the number of humans and Blood Clan members, but the Blood Clan's development was much better than the humans. They used artificial blood to replace human blood. After several modifications, the final taste was much more delicious than human blood. The blood of humans became worthless all of a sudden. Shisheng was the Blood Clan King who did not care about anything, but no one dared to rebel against her. The reason? She did not care how the people below her fought for power. As long as they did not fight with her for the title of Blood Clan King, she could not be bothered to roll her eyes. However, if they dared to challenge her title, they would be destroyed. As a result, the people below her seemed to have come to an agreement. No matter how fiercely they fought, they would never have any ideas about Shisheng. What, are you unhappy? Xiyin saw Shisheng sitting on the bed with a gloomy expression. He walked over, cupped her face, and kissed her cheek. Didn't you teach those people a lesson today? Unexpectedly, Shisheng turned the laptop around. This guy actually gave me negative marks. Shein looked at the laptop. It was a certain literature website. There was a new comment on it, and the negative marks were bright red. Who told you to dig a hole and not fill it? Shein shook his head and took the laptop. Where did you write? Where the female lead jumped off a cliff. Shein's mouth twitched. She seemed to really like writing about the female lead jumping off a cliff. Shein opened the document with practiced ease. He glanced at her article, his fingers flying across the keyboard. It's so good to have a husband who can write. She was no longer afraid of digging a hole and not filling it. When the latest chapter was uploaded, Shein closed the laptop and turned to look at Sheng, who was cupping her face. Shouldn't we do some exercise, HM? Hooligan. Sheng leaned back. Come little vixen. Let's fight for 300 rounds. Shein smiled and pounced on her. Why did he like her so much? At the same time, a certain literature website was exploding. March scene. Dida finally updated. Sprinkle flowers. Today she, Dida actually filled in a hole. Horrifying. I really wish there were only two. Am I the only one who noticed that Dida's style of writing changed every time she abandoned a hole? A great thief. One look and I can tell that the person above is new. Let me explain. Scientific expert. Look at me, look at me. The new cherub is looking at me. Our Dida is famous for digging a hole and not filling it. But Dida has a good Adonis. Every time Dida abandoned a hole, Adonis would help Dida fill it in. Ah, I want such a gentle and considerate Adonis. Rich girl Chio. Dida always shows off Adonis. He's so handsome. His writing is so good too. I want such a Adonis plus 1 jade round ball. I want such a Adonis plus 2 clear time bright night. I want such a Adonis plus 3 muyu xiao xiao. Asterisk the 10th world ended. Ah, I beg for monthly votes double. Double. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.